Chapter 3282. Celestial Spirit Sects. Means were very powerful. When they stopped Qing Feng in front of the gate, they didn't take excessive means. After all, Qing Feng was the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit Sect and the junior fellow apprentice of Emperor Qingeng. Celestial Spirit Sect didn't want to offend Celestial Spirit Sect because of Qing Feng. At that time, Celestial Spirit Sect just casually said that if Qing Feng could defeat a successor of Celestial Spirit Sect who was at the same level as him, they would allow him to enter the sect to see Tian Ruojing. Qing Feng agreed without hesitation. Then, Qing Feng was beaten violently. He didn't admit defeat even when he was beaten into a coma. The scene of this battle was imprinted on the jade slips by Celestial Spirit Sect. After Qing Feng was sent back to Celestial Spirit Sect, the jade slips were also handed over to Fu Yunzi, the headmaster of Celestial Spirit Sect. This made Fu Yunzi unable to find a reason to go to Celestial Spirit Sect to punish Qing Feng. Because Qing Feng took the initiative to go to Celestial Spirit Sect and agreed to fight. Who could he blame? But after knowing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. He inherited Qing Feng's experience and memory, but unexpectedly found that Qing Feng, who was regarded as a shame by the sect and a joke by the outside world, was actually an extremely simple and kind person. The biggest flaw in him was that he didn't know the ways of the world. If he didn't know the ways of the world, he would inevitably attract criticism when he did things, such as overestimating himself, ungrateful, reckless, and so on. But Qing Feng didn't care about these. His greatest wish was to spend a long time with Tian Ruojing and grow old together. He didn't care about the malice and ridicule of other people in the world. Obviously, the reality was cruel. Qing Feng, who was so simple and stupid, was destined to have a hard time to stand firm in the cruel world of cultivation. It turns out that he is trapped by love. After a long time, when he found the things related to Tian Ruojing from Qing Feng's memory, Lin Sun understood. When a person experiences all sorts of setbacks and tribulations, they would either be unable to recover after a single setback, or they would become braver the more setbacks they faced, and they would temper a heart that had been tempered 100 times and 100 times. But Qing Feng didn't have a tempered Taoist heart, but he didn't collapse. The reason was that Qing Feng's state of mind had been in a state of infatuation since he met Tian Ruojing for 900 years. Because of his infatuation, he did not care about all the slander and ridicule. It was also because of his infatuation that he didn't care about being a laughingstock and being humiliated. Unfortunately, it's a one-sided love. Lin Sun felt funny and emotional at the same time. Immediately, Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious. Qing Feng had been cultivating for 1,000 years. As a Grand Supreme Elder, why was his cultivation stagnant at the reincarnation development realm? If his aptitude was poor, how could he have had the opportunity to enter the celestial sect to cultivate? There was definitely something strange about this. Lin Sun got rid of distracting thoughts and calmed down a feel. Soon, he realized where the problem was. A frightening crack appeared on the foundation of Green Peak's Great Tao. It was as if a boulder had been split in half. Under such circumstances, it was no wonder that Qing Feng's cultivation had remained at the reincarnation development realm. If it was any other cultivator, no matter how heaven-defying their talent was, they were bound to be the same as Qing Feng, who caused such an indelible damage to Green Peak's foundation. Lin Sun sorted out Qing Feng's memory again. After a while, he narrowed his eyes and understood. 900 years ago, Qing Feng already had the cultivation of the reincarnation development realm. At that time, he had only cultivated for 100 years. It was amazing and rare for him to have such cultivation. It was also at that time that Qing Feng met Tian Ruojing and fell in love with her. At that time, Tian Ruojing was only at the Tao Insight realm, but she was extremely beautiful and outstanding and had many followers around her. At that time, Tian Ruojing also had a good impression of Qing Feng, and they went out to travel together. However, when Tian Ruojing was exploring a secret realm, she encountered a deadly calamity. Seeing that her life was in danger, it was Qing Feng who stepped forward bravely and blocked the calamity alone, saving her life. Although the fatal disaster was resolved, Qing Feng was seriously injured. When he recovered, he found that his great Tao foundation had suffered irreparable damage. For any cultivator, this was definitely the cruelest and heaviest blow. But Qing Feng didn't care. What he cared about was that he saved Tian Ruojing and didn't let the woman he loved suffer. At that time, Tian Ruojing was also very moved and said that she would stay with Qing Feng in the future, which naturally made Qing Feng ecstatic. However, shortly after they returned to their respective sects, Tian Ruojing sent a letter and told Qing Feng euphemistically that she was at the critical moment of cultivation and couldn't be with Qing Feng in a short time. Qing Feng understood and had been looking forward to it. He often wrote to Tian Ruojing, expressing his thoughts and feelings in lines of handwriting. At first, Tian Ruojing would reply one by one in a timely manner. But gradually, Qing Feng could only receive a reply every 3 to 5 days. Later, he could only receive a reply every 3 to 5 months. If it were a normal person, he would have long suspected that Tian Ruojing's mind had changed. But Qing Feng was still full of expectations. During this period, Tian Ruojing once wrote a letter to Qing Feng and asked him not to tell others that he saved her in the secret realm. Qing Feng agreed. So until now, his senior brother Qing Heng, Marshal nephew Fu Yunzi, and the others still didn't know that Qing Feng's great Tao foundation was damaged because of saving Tian Ruojing. And it was not difficult to see how much Qing Feng cared about Tian Ruojing. All these years, he suffered so much criticism and humiliation, but he didn't tell anyone about this secret. Year after year passed. Qing Feng, who had been waiting to be with Tian Ruojing, finally couldn't hold back anymore. He began to take the initiative to go to Celestial Spirit Sect to look for Tian Ruojing. But every time he waited, the answer was the same. Tian Ruojing was in seclusion. Qing Feng didn't give up and went to inquire about the news every few days. Gradually, even Celestial Spirit Sect knew that Qing Feng, the joke guy, was actually trying to be with Tian Ruojing. This also caused a lot of vicious mockery and ridicule. But Qing Feng still didn't care. Gradually, even Celestial Spirit Sect began to reject and hate Qing Feng. They didn't expect that Qing Feng would pester them to such an extent. And Celestial Spirit Sect also felt ashamed for Qing Feng, the Supreme Elder. More than one person told Qing Feng that he and Tian Ruojing were not from the same world, and advised him to give up. This included his senior brother, Qing Heng. He even found many beautiful women for him, trying to make Qing Feng fall in love with someone else. But Qing Feng was still infatuated with her. So far, no one in Celestial Spirit Sect persuaded Qing Feng anymore. But Lin Sun frowned when he learned about these past events. If Qing Feng's one-sided love was one-sided and he was rejected and hated by Tian Ruojing, then it was understandable. After all, falling flowers yearn for love, but heartless water flows mercilessly. But now it seemed that things were not like this at all. If Qing Feng hadn't risked his life to save her, Tian Ruojing would have been in trouble. The most hateful thing was that if she didn't promise to stay with Qing Feng, maybe Qing Feng wouldn't have waited so bitterly until now. Even if it was a promise, it was easy to regret it. She could just tell Qing Feng directly. Why did she keep delaying and let Qing Feng have a glimmer of hope? It's fine if this woman doesn't fulfill her promise from all those years ago. But Qing Feng saved her life all those years ago after all, yet she doesn't know how to repay his kindness. She just watched as Qing Feng was reduced to shame and a laughingstock because of her. How selfish and indifferent is her disposition. Lin Sun was a little angry. Well, since I borrowed your identity, memory, and experience for the time being, I will do you a favor when I leave in the future. Lin Sun took a long breath and collected his thoughts. 3 days later, Celestial Spirit Sect, Scripture's Tower. Qing Feng, who was Lin Sun, sat alone in front of a desk, reading a scroll in his hand. Uncle Master Qing Heng has said that you are not allowed to leave the sect again. From today onwards, you will stay here. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell those disciples. As long as it's within my capabilities, I will definitely help you. Fu Yunzi whispered on one side. I see. Lin Sun said absent-mindedly. Fu Yunzi looked at the two disciples of Scripture's tower, not far away, and said, From today on, you must serve the supreme elder of Qing Feng well. If there is any neglect, you will not be forgiven. Yes, headmaster. The two disciples hurriedly cupped their hands and accepted the order. Uncle, do you have anything else to tell us? Fu Yunzi looked at Lin Sun again. Nothing. Staying here is more leisurely. By the way, tell Brother Qing Hong that I will not go to see Tian Ruojing in the future, so he doesn't have to worry about me anymore. Lin Sun said. In the whole Celestial Spirit sect, Qing Hong was the best to Qing Feng. The two joined the sect together when they were young, and until now, they were like blood brothers. Over the years, even though Qing Feng caused a lot of jokes, Qing Hong had been using his own strength to protect Qing Feng. This was why, although the sect regarded Qing Feng as a shame, they dared not slander and disrespect him openly. Fu Yunzi was stunned and said incredulously, Uncle, is what you said true? God, after being beaten up, did Martial Uncle really have a change of heart? Whether it is true or not, we will know in the future. You should leave quickly. As a headmaster, there's still many things to worry about. You'd better not come to Scripture's Tower in the future. Lin Sun waved his hand. Fu Yunzi uttered and looked at Lin Sun suspiciously, then turned around and left. The two of you can leave as well. Lin Sun looked at the two disciples of Scripture's Tower. One was called Chun Ning, and the other was called Dai Yin. They were a little hesitant. I know you are here to keep an eye on me, worried that I will escape from the sect, but you can stay outside Scripture's Tower. Lin Sun said casually. Chun Ning and Dai Yin looked at each other, then accepted the order and walked out of Scripture's Tower. It is not bad to stay in Scripture's Tower. As long as I keep a low profile, it is enough to make people not notice my abnormality, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. As a favored, as soon as his identity was seen through, then his enemies in this world would definitely come looking for him. After all, he was only in the reincarnation developing realm and was at his weakest. Any random enemy could kill him. P.S. Don't worry, it is a script of cultivating and killing monsters to level up. The process will be quick. Chapter 3283. The territory of the Tao development world was so huge that it could be compared to a heaven in the eternal true world. Since ancient times, there have been 4 great orthodoxies in this world. They were the Celestial Pavilion, the Celestial Court, the Demon Sect, and the Demon Sect. Within the 4 orthodoxies, there were many undying beings. Under the 4 orthodoxies, there were 12 first-rate cultivation forces. Among these forces, there were also undying beings in charge, but their foundations were far from the 4 orthodoxies. Further down were countless second-rate and third-rate powers, and they were distributed in different territories of the Tao development world. These powers basically didn't have any undying overseeing them. For example, the Celestial Sect was a second-rate power that was situated in the eastern territory of the Tao evolution world, and there were over 100 similar second-rate powers in this territory. There was only one first-rate force, the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect. The Scarlet Serpent Celestial Sect was a subordinate of one of the 4 great orthodoxies, the Celestial Pavilion. Knowing these news, Lin Sun felt more relieved. After all, the Celestial Sect was considered a second-rate sect. If he were to hide within the sect, it would be impossible for his enemies to find him in a short period of time. If they were to appear in a first-rate faction or one of the 4 great orthodoxies upon entering this world, the risk would be too great. For Lin, the top priority was to cultivate as soon as possible. If I want to use Qingfeng's foundation, soul, and body to develop a great Tao that leads straight to eternity, I must first comprehend the power of the heavenly Tao that belongs to this world. But if I'm only at the reincarnation development stage, I can at most sense the Tao runes and Tao will in the heavenly cycle Tao laws. I can forget about prying into the essence of the laws of this world. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The lower 5 realms were limited by their cultivation. They could only sense the Tao runes and Tao intents that belong to the heavenly cycle Tao laws. The Tao path of longevity, the Tao path of sage, the Tao path of emperors, and the Tao path of immortality could only sense the mysteries of the great Taoist that corresponded to one's cultivation level. As such, one could imagine it was almost impossible to peek into the mysteries of the rules of this world in the reincarnation development state. Then I'll first resolve the cracks in the foundation of the great Tao and increase my cultivation. Lin Sun made a decision. Although he had become Qing Feng, his wisdom and cultivation experience were still there. To others, the foundation of Azure Peak's Grand Tao was already impossible to repair. But to him, there were thousands of ways to solve this problem. Time passed day by day. To everyone in the celestial sect, life was the same as before. Very few people would pay attention to Grand Elder Qing Feng's movements. Who would care about such a disgrace of a sect? To most people in celestial sect, it was a blessing that he didn't have to go out and embarrass himself. Headmaster Fu Yunzi was still a little worried at first, but as time passed, he found that Qing Feng had been staying in the scripture pavilion, so he finally relaxed. As the sect master, it was impossible for him to place all his attention on Qing Feng, especially after Qing Feng became well-behaved. He had practically lost his sense of existence. Even the disciples who frequently entered the scripture pavilion to read books turned a blind eye to Qing Feng. It wasn't because they disdained him, but because they were ashamed to be associated with him. How could Lin Sun care about this? He wished that everyone would stop paying attention to him. A month passed quickly. Lin Sun sat in the Sutras Pavilion drinking tea and reading books every day. When dusk fell, he would return to his residence to meditate. Day after day, no one knew that in the past 6 months, he had already solved the big injury on his foundation. Using a secret technique, he completely overturned the cultivation of the lower 5 realms of the Green Peak and recultivated them, allowing each realm to reach an unprecedented level. However, for fear of being seen through by others, Lin Sun had been concealing all his changes with a secret method. In the eyes of outsiders, he was still the disgrace of the sect, and they were ashamed to be associated with him. During this period, Qing Hung also came to the scripture pavilion, ostensibly to consult an ancient book, but in fact, he came to see Qing Feng. Seeing that Qing Feng had been staying here obediently, Qing Hung was relieved. He left some elixirs he had refined, saying that they were good for repairing the foundation of Tao. Lin Sun couldn't help sighing that Qing Feng had a good senior brother. Taking this opportunity, Lin Sun asked Qing Hung for instructions, hoping to go to Tianluo Cave, the forbidden area of the sect, to cultivate for a period of time. This made Qing Hung surprised and happy, and he agreed without hesitation. It's naturally a good thing that junior brother is able to put his mind on cultivation. After half a year of cultivation in Tianluo Cave, Lin Sun reached the 9th level of longevity tribulation in one fell swoop. At this point, Tianluo Cave could no longer satisfy Lin Sun's cultivation. He immediately left and decided to go to Qing Hung. After all, he was Qing Feng now. He had been infatuated with Tian Ruojing for 900 years. It was obviously unreasonable for him not to go to Tian Ruojing all of a sudden. If someone investigated it, it would definitely arouse a lot of suspicion. Junior brother, what can I do for you? In a cave residence, Qing Hung looked at Lin Sun, who came to his door, and asked, Senior brother, the elixirs you gave me before are really effective. My foundation of Tao has been repaired a lot. It won't take long for me to recover. Lin Sun showed a look of joy. He had to pretend for a while. Really? Qing Hung couldn't help getting excited. Lin Sun nodded with a smile, and then hesitated. Senior brother, I want to go to Celestial Spirit's sect. Suddenly, Qing Hang's heart sank with excitement. He frowned and said, It's only been 2 months. Junior brother, you can't help but want to see that woman again? His tone was full of exasperation. Lin Sun could feel the change of Qing Hang's mood, but he had to continue pretending. He said in a low voice, Senior brother, I think if my foundation can be repaired, I can improve my cultivation step by step in the future. Sooner or later, I can catch up with Ruojing's pace, so... Qing Hang's face was gloomy. He scolded, You can see her if you want. When you become an emperor, I will take you to Celestial Spirit's sect to see her. Before that, Don't even think about leaving Celestial Spirit Sect. His attitude was firm. Lin Sun looked helpless, but he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing this scene, he had probably judged that Qin Hung had not suspected his identity so far. Junior brother, in my opinion, Tian Ruojing is the devil in your heart on the road of cultivation. If you don't get rid of the devil in your heart, it will be difficult for you to make great achievements on the road of cultivation in this life. Qin Hung said in a light voice. Yet now, since there's hope for your foundation in the Grand Tao to recover, the more I can't allow you to persist in going about things the wrong way. From today onwards, I'll personally pass down my experiences in cultivation to you every 3 months. Seeing this, Lin Sun hurriedly interrupted. No, senior brother, your time is so precious. How can you waste it on me? I will listen to you and stay in Celestial Spirit Sect. After saying this, he left quickly. Qin Hung saw this. He couldn't help but sigh with a headache and helplessness. His junior brother was so talented in those days, but now he became like this. It was completely ruined by Tian Ruojing. I will find a chance to teach that woman a lesson in the future. Qin Hung secretly gritted his teeth. After leaving Qin Heng's residence, Lin Sun went straight back to the Sutras Pavilion. Although Qin Hung doesn't doubt me now, there are so many eyes in Celestial Spirit Sect. I have to make them not suspect me. Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly shook his head and sighed. Granduncle, why do you sigh? Chun Ning, a disciple who had been stationed in the Sutras Pavilion, couldn't help asking. You don't understand. Lin Sun sighed. Dai Yin, a disciple on the side, couldn't help saying, Granduncle, don't tell me you want to go to Celestial Spirit Sect again? Lin Sun was silent for a while and said helplessly, I can't go. Just now, senior brother Qin Hung has ordered that I am not allowed to go out. Chun Ning and Dai Yin looked at each other and were speechless. It had only been 2 months of peace, and Granduncle's old habits were obviously acting up again. On the same day, the two spread the news, which made Fu Yunzi's cheeks twitch. He thought that Granduncle had been enlightened, but he didn't expect that old habits were still hard to change. When other people in Celestial Spirit Sect learned about this, they didn't find it strange at all. On the contrary, they thought that this was the Qing Feng they knew. No one knew that Lin Sun also took great pains to put on this show in order not to arouse any suspicion. A few days later, Lin Sun, who was drinking tea and reading in the Sutras Pavilion, inadvertently learned a piece of news from the discussion of some disciples. A month ago, the 4 major orthodoxies, Immortal Pavilion, Divine Court, Demon Sect, and Demon Sect, issued an order to arrest all favored who had recently entered the Tao world. Whoever could provide information would receive generous rewards from the 4 orthodoxies. At the same time, the 12 top forces under the 4 orthodoxies all dispatched their forces to cooperate with the 4 orthodoxies to patrol the world and search for traces of favored. As soon as news like this spread, the entire world was shocked, and the world was in an uproar. The entire Tao development world fell into turmoil. And according to the news Lin Sun received, in the Eastern Territory, where Celestial Spirit Sect was located, the only Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect had also taken action. They had sent 10 Xie Emperor ancestors to patrol the major forces in the Eastern Territory. And it wouldn't be long before these 10 Xie Emperor ancestors arrived at Celestial Spirit Sect to investigate. This made Lin Sun's heart tremble. He didn't even need to think to know that this storm was coming for him. When it came to favored, all the major powers of the evolution Tao world knew about them. They knew that favored didn't belong to their world. For example, in the 4 orthodoxies, there were already more than 10 favored that were known to the world. Every one of them was a giant figure on the immortal path. Many of them had the cultivation of transcendent realm. And people like Qing Feng also knew that among the favored of the 4 Tao courts, there were 7 of the strongest. They were the mandate envoys from the Zhen division of the Taichu sect. The leader was called Zhu Cheng, the first person on the immortal path. This made Lin Sun, who had inherited Qing Feng's memories, naturally know that this storm targeting him was the work of Zhu Cheng and the other 6 mandate envoys. Fortunately, I made some remedial measures a few days ago and didn't arouse any suspicion. In this case, even if the 10 Ju Sierra Emperor ancestors from the Scarlet Serpent Immortal sect come, they shouldn't be able to find anything, Lin Sun thought. Chapter 3284. On the third day after Lin Sun got the news, the 10 Juetian Emperors of Crimson Serpent Immortal sect came together, and the Supreme Elder Qing Hung and Qing Gong went to greet them in person. An hour later, all the disciples in the lower 5 realms of Celestial sect were summoned to the hall of the sect to be questioned by the Juetian Emperors of Crimson Serpent Immortal sect. Even Chunning and Dai Yin, who were stationed outside the Sutras Pavilion, were summoned. Lin Sun couldn't help but be vigilant. But to his surprise, he was not summoned. Chunning and Dai Yin returned at noon and told Lin that the 10 Juetian Emperors of Crimson Serpent Immortal sect had left. Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "I'm also in the reincarnation developing realm. Why didn't they summon me?" Chun Ning had a strange expression as she said, embarrassedly, "Martial Granduncle, what kind of status do you have? How can you possibly be someone they can meet just because they want to?" Lin Sun glanced at him and said, "Who are you trying to fool? Just tell them the truth." Chun Ning hesitated for a while before saying in a low voice, "Before they came, they had already heard many things about you, Martial Granduncle. After arriving at the sect, they verified it with Martial Granduncle Qing Hung, and then decided not to see you. It must be more than that. Go on." Lin Sun frowned. Chunning finally told the truth. "Those masters of Crimson Serpent Immortal sect said that you were pitiful enough, and they couldn't bear to embarrass you in public." Dai Yin, who was at the side, also hurriedly said, "Senior Granduncle, you are the supreme elder of our celestial sect. How can you be interrogated like the others in the lower 5 levels? If they do that, Senior Granduncle Qing Hung will definitely be the first to object." Lin Sun laughed and said, "In the final analysis, they are looking down on me." He breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Looking down on me? Of course it was great. Chunning and Dai Yin cursed in their hearts. Now you know they are looking down on you. All right, you can leave. Lin Sun waved his hand. This invisible crisis was resolved, but Lin Sun became more vigilant. He knew very well that the enemy would not give up until they caught him. "I must improve my cultivation as soon as possible." Lin Sun felt a sense of urgency. A few days later, Lin Sun went to find Qing Hung and said, "Senior brother, I want to travel outside for a while." "Travel?" Qing Hung was suspicious. "Yes, I'm extremely bored, so I want to go out and relax," Lin Sun said. Qing Hung said, "Are you planning to take a roundabout route to find Tian Ruojing?" Lin smiled bitterly and said, "Senior brother, how about letting Dai Yin and Chunning follow me? If I go to the Heavenly Spirit sect, ask them to inform you immediately, okay?" Qing Hung pondered for a moment and said, "Fine, as long as you don't go to Celestial Spirit sect to look for that girl, I will allow you to go out." As he spoke, he took out a jade talisman from his arms and handed it to Lin Sun. He said gently, "Take this jade talisman with you. There's an image of my will in it. If you're in danger, just crush it." Lin Sun took it and said with a smile, "Thank you for your help." He felt more and more in his heart how fortunate it was for the Azure Peak to have such a senior brother. On that day, he left the sect with Chun Ning and Dai Yin. However, in the 10 days since he left Celestial Spirit sect, Lin Sun had always felt that someone was following him in secret. It was not until he was sure that there was no sign of him going to Celestial Spirit sect did the person secretly follow him. He left quietly. Lin Sun didn't need to guess to know that it was Qing Hung. In an inn. It was late at night. Chunning and Dai Yin were meditating in their rooms. However, all of them completely didn't notice that in the neighboring room, 5 Grand Dao clones had suddenly surged out from the body of their martial ancestral uncle, Qing Feng, that they'd always been watching over. Then, the 5 clones turned into shadows of light and silently left the tavern. From today onwards, the 5 great Taoist bodies would cultivate in the wilderness and deep within the mountains. They would study the great Taos of the universe and deduce their future path towards the Tao with their strength. With Lin Sun's wisdom and cultivation experience at the level of Boundless Realm, it would be as easy as turning over his hand to recultivate his past cultivation path with the 5 Tao forms. His speed of breaking through the realm would be several times faster than comprehending by himself. In the final analysis, due to the limitation of cultivation, Lin Sun could only cultivate with the help of the 5 Tao forms in order to improve his cultivation as quickly as possible. Moreover, the 5 Tao forms didn't have to worry about being stared at by many people when they cultivated outside. Even if they broke through the realm repeatedly, they didn't have to worry about causing any disturbance. But it was different in Celestial Spirit's sect, where there were too many eyes. A little carelessness was very likely to leave traces. Even if my original body doesn't do anything, when the 5 Tao forms return one day, my cultivation will also break through to the same realm. In the room of the inn, Lin Sun stretched his body and felt relaxed all over. The next morning, he decided to return to Celestial Spirit sect. This made Chun Ning and Dai Yin very surprised. He was going back after just half a month of traveling outside. Lin Sun didn't care what they thought. He had achieved his purpose of going out this time. How could he still have the mood to wander around? On the way to Celestial Spirit sect, they met a group of descendants of Celestial Spirit sect, all of whom were in the reincarnation developing realm. When they saw Lin Sun, these descendants of Celestial Spirit sect burst into laughter. "Senior Brother Wei, isn't this the shameless old man who was beaten up by you?" "Shameless old man? He is the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect and the junior brother of Emperor Qingheng. But his cultivation is a bit too poor. Such a guy still wants our supreme third elder. It's like a toad lusting after swan meat." Suddenly, all kinds of sarcasm and ridicule were directed at Lin Sun unceremoniously. In Qingfeng's memory, he had experienced such scenes too many times. If it were Qingfeng himself, he would certainly not care. If it were Lin Sun, although he frowned slightly, he could only imitate Qingfeng's method and make himself ignore it. Lin Sun was also very helpless. If he couldn't keep his cool, he wouldn't be the Qingfeng everyone was familiar with. However, this time he saw the descendant of Celestial Spirit's sect who had beaten Qingfeng into a coma. This person, dressed in snow-white clothes, had an imposing appearance and a youthful arrogance. His name was Wei Xian. "Aren't you going too far?" Lin Sun could still bear the ridicule, but Chunning and Dai Yin couldn't. They looked ashamed and angry. In their hearts, no matter how unbearable Qingfeng was, he was still the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect. How could they feel good being ridiculed by some reincarnation developing realm cultivators of Celestial Spirit sect? Going too far? We're just telling the truth. If you're not convinced, why don't we play? Wei Xian's eyes were full of disdain as he glanced at Chunning and Dai Yin. Why not? Chunning was also angry. She was about to step forward to fight, but was stopped by Lin Sun. "Forget it. Don't bother with them. Let's go back to the sect first." Senior Granduncle. Chun Ning was very angry, and also very disappointed in her heart. Martial Granduncle. "Oh, Martial Granduncle, I am standing up for you. Can't you appear a little more unyielding? Even if you're beaten, I'll bear it." Dai Yin also sighed and said, "Chunning, listen to Senior Granduncle. Let's go." Chunning was silent for a moment and nodded with a gloomy face. Lin Sun didn't say anything more and left with them. Wei Xian and the others didn't stop them, but their words were unforgiving. They not only ridiculed and humiliated Lin Sun, but also Chunning. When Chunning left, his fists were clenched so tightly that blue veins were bulging. It was clear how angry he was. After returning to Celestial Spirit sect, Chunning didn't say a word. When facing Lin Sun, his attitude also changed. Although he was still respectful, there was a sense of alienation. It was the same for Dai Yin. Both of them were very unhappy and disappointed. Seeing all this, Lin Sun began to appreciate the two young people. Under such circumstances, they still dared to stand up for him. The shame of the sect. This kind of temperament was very rare. After thinking about it, he went straight to find Headmaster Fu Yunzi and told him what happened on the way. Fu Yunzi's face was also gloomy. He immediately said in surprise, "Senior granduncle, you didn't care about these things in the past. How come this time?" Lin Sun said, "It doesn't matter if I'm looked down on, but I can't let the future generations of the sect suffer grievances with me." Fu Yunzi immediately understood and said solemnly, "Senior granduncle, I will appease them well." He also knew that this senior granduncle of his was not a bad person. In fact, he was extremely benevolent. It was just that his temperament was too simple and simple-minded. Sure enough, the next day, Chunning and Diane's attitude towards Lin Sun had changed a lot. Yesterday, the headmaster had talked to them and knew that Lin Sun had taken the initiative to talk about their affairs. For this, the headmaster also rewarded them with a lot of cultivation resources. "Senior granduncle, we're not angry with you. We're just angry that they don't put our celestial spirit sect in their eyes. It's really hateful," Chunning said in a low voice. "Yes, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely go and wrestle with them," Diane also said. Lin Sun smiled and didn't say much. Time flew by like an arrow. 1 year after Lin Sun appeared in the Tao development world. The 5 Tao bodies have been cultivating for half a year. I wonder to what extent their cultivation has improved. In the Sutras Pavilion, Lin Sun flipped through the scrolls while his mind wandered. "Senior granduncle, bad news. Senior granduncle Qing Hung returned injured." Suddenly, Chunning's anxious voice sounded outside the Sutras Pavilion. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. He put away the scroll in his hand and stood up, saying, "Didn't senior brother go to participate in the 100 Sect Dharma Conference? Why'd he come back injured?" A month ago, the Red Serpent Immortal Sect held the 100 Sect Dharma Conference and invited hundreds of second-rate and third-rate sects in the Eastern Territory to participate. As the representative of Celestial Spirit Sect, Qing Hung also went to participate. But the ancestor sent a message saying that Qing Hung was injured, which surprised Lin Sun. In the whole Celestial Spirit Sect, Qing Hung took care of Qing Feng the most and regarded him as a brother. If something happened to Qing Hung, Lin Sun would feel sorry. Chunning shook her head and said, "I don't know. Why don't you go and see senior granduncle?" Lin Sun nodded and went straight to Qing Feng. Chapter 3285. The Sect Hall. The Supreme Elder Qing Gong, the Sect Master Fu Yunzi, and all the elders were gathered here, and all of them had extremely gloomy expressions. Not far away, Qing Hung sat cross-legged with a pale face and a dispirited aura. "Everyone, it's just a minor injury. There's no need to be so worried." Qing Hung smiled and shook his head. However, he coughed violently as soon as he finished speaking, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. "You call this a minor injury? You even injured your foundation." Qing Gong gritted his teeth and said, "Tian Ruojing was too ruthless. We can't let this enmity go." Qing Hung waved his hand and said, "Don't say such angry words. During the 100 Sect Conference, I fought her fairly. I can't blame anyone for my loss." He paused for a moment and said sadly, "Not to mention that an eternal figure of the Celestial Pavilion has taken a fancy to Tian Ruojing, and she'll be selected to be an elder of the Celestial Pavilion 10 years from now. With her current identity, even the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect has to be courteous to her. We can't be enemies with her." As he finished speaking, his voice revealed dense bitterness. Everyone's expressions changed indeterminately when they heard this, and they fell silent. One of the 4 great sects, the Celestial Pavilion, had sent an eternal figure to participate in the 100 Sect Conference. In the end, that eternal figure took a fancy to 10 imperial ancestors, and he promised to select these 10 imperial ancestors to be elders of the Celestial Pavilion 10 years from now. They would be stationed in the secret realm of the Celestial Pavilion to cultivate. One of these 10 people was the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Spirit Sect, Tian Ruojing. Everyone knew that Tian Ruojing's identity was completely different from now onward, and she could be said to have ascended to the heavens in a single step. After all, the Celestial Pavilion was one of the 4 great sects of the Tao development world, and even the 12 first-rate powers in the world had no choice but to bow their heads to it. It was absolutely an extraordinary power that ruled over this world. Before a colossus like the Celestial Pavilion, second-rate powers like the Celestial Sect and the Celestial Spirit Sect were nothing. 10 years from now, Tian Ruojing would become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion, and her identity was so high that it could even make a first-rate power like the Crimson-Cut Immortal Sect lower its head. Under such circumstances, if the Celestial Sect viewed Tian Ruojing as their enemy, the Celestial Pavilion wouldn't even need to do anything. The Scarlet Serpent Celestial Sect will be the first to move and destroy the Celestial Sect. Everyone in the hall was clearly aware of this as well, but they couldn't help but feel gloomy and oppressed in their hearts, and they felt resentment that had nowhere to vent. At this moment, a figure walked into the hall. It was Lin Sun. When the crowd saw him appear, their expressions became even more unsightly, and they were filled with anger. Qing Feng, you've caused senior brother Qing Hung to suffer. Qing Geng couldn't help but shout angrily, venting his pent-up anger on Lin Sun. It was the first time for Lin Sun to meet Qing Geng, but he knew that Qing Feng was extremely in awe of him. The reason was that Qing Geng's temperament was unyielding and overbearing. He had always looked down on him, the shame of the sect, and he had reprimanded and scolded Qing Feng many times. I was the one who harmed senior brother Qing Hung. Lin Sun frowned and glanced around. His heart sank when he saw everyone's gloomy expression. He realized that Qing Heng's injury might be extremely serious this time. If you hadn't pestered Tian Ruojing all these years, how could senior brother Qing Hung have a duel with Tian Ruojing in the Assembly of Hundred Sects? Qing Geng said angrily. Headmaster Fu Yunzi and the other elders also had ugly expressions on their faces. Qing Geng, how can you blame junior brother for this? He didn't know anything about it. Qing Hung, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, sighed. You all leave. I want to talk to junior brother Qing Feng alone. At this time, you still want to protect him? You know, Tian Ruojing has been recognized by the Immortal Pavilion. If you don't teach Qing Feng a lesson and he goes to the Immortal Pavilion to pester Tian Ruojing in the future, how much trouble will he cause? At that time, can you still protect him, senior brother? Qing Geng's face was livid. Leave. Qing Hung looked up at Qing Geng. Qing Geng's face was gloomy for a while. Finally, he swung his sleeves and left angrily. Before leaving, he gave Lin Sun a fierce look, full of contempt and coldness. Fu Yunzi and other elders also left when they saw this. Soon, only Qing Hung and Lin Sun were left in the sec hall. Senior brother, did Tian Ruojing hurt you? Lin Sun stepped forward and saw at a glance that Qing Hung was in a bad state. There were faint signs of disorder in his qi. If he guessed right, Qing Hung was not only seriously injured, but also hurt the foundation of Tao. This caused him to feel rather upset in his heart. With Qing Feng's memory, he knew that Qing Hung was the only one who treated him sincerely in Celestial Sect. Even if Qing Feng had done a lot of ridiculous things over the years, Qing Hung had always used his own strength to protect his junior brother. At this time, seeing that Qing Hung was so seriously injured, and it was very likely to be related to Tian Ruojing, Lin Sun couldn't help but be angry. Was it not enough for this woman to hurt Qing Feng? Was she going to destroy Qing Hung? It's indeed related to her. Qing Hung motioned Lin Sun to sit down and then smiled bitterly. I was going to take the opportunity of 100 Sect Dharma Conference to teach Tian Ruojing a lesson, but I didn't expect that I would be taught a lesson by her instead. Lin Sun's mood was complicated. Sure enough, Qing Hung wanted to avenge his junior brother, Qing Feng, and was injured because of this. When people in the world regarded Qing Feng as a joke, Qing Hung, the supreme elder of Celestial Sect, wanted to avenge his junior brother, which made Lin Sun sigh with emotion in his heart. What a good senior brother. Hey, let's not talk about this. We haven't had a good chat for a long time. Let's have a good chat today. With that, Qing Hung took out a pot of wine and drank it heartily. Then he said, Junior brother, I still remember the scene when we entered Celestial Sect when we were young. At that time, 9 of us were selected as disciples, but because of my poor background, I was often excluded and isolated. Only you treated me as a friend and never cared how humble my background was. His eyes were full of reminiscence, and he looked absent-minded. You don't know that I looked proud and conceited at that time, but in fact I was extremely self-abased. I always felt that I was inferior to others in every aspect and often felt sorry for myself. I remember once I was bullied by senior brother Chong. He stepped on my face with his foot and laughed at me, who was born in a poor family. Even if I had the opportunity to cultivate, I was doomed to be trampled by him for the rest of my life. Speaking of this, Ching Hung looked up at Lin Sun. Do you know, I was so ashamed and resentful at that time that I even had the idea of committing suicide. Then, you appeared and fought with senior brother Chong like a fool. You didn't even take a step back when you were beaten to the point of vomiting blood. You kept standing in front of me, and the blood that flowed out of your mouth was all over my face. I can still remember that bloody smell. Ching Hung took a deep breath and drank another mouthful of wine, saying, "It was also that day that I swore to protect you for the rest of my life, even at the cost of my life." Speaking of this, he smiled bitterly, but I didn't expect that you would be delayed by Tian Ruojing. Even if I wanted to help you, I couldn't do anything. Lin Sun listened silently, and the memory of Qing Feng's youth emerged in his mind. His mood also fluctuated. After a while, he said, "Senior brother, you have helped me too much. I will remember it all in my heart. As for Tian Ruojing, I will deal with her myself in the future." Qing Hung suddenly said coldly, "Junior brother, tell me the truth. Was your Grand Dao Foundation that suffered a heavy injury all those years ago because of Tian Ruojing?" Lin Sun was stunned and said, "Senior brother, it's all in the past." Qing Heng's expression was complicated. "Sure enough, I knew it. You were in the reincarnation developing realm, and Tian Ruojing was only in the Tao insight realm. When you explored the secret realm together, it was your foundation of Tao that was hurt. How could there be nothing strange about it?" As he spoke, he drank another mouthful of wine and said in a self-deprecating manner, "This is great. Both of us have injured our great Tao foundations. It's all related to Tian Ruojing. We could be considered to be going through thick and thin together." That laughter was filled with indescribable melancholy and bitterness. "Senior brother, don't be so discouraged. In my opinion, you will definitely be able to recover your Tao injuries in the future and go further on the path of Tao." Lin Sun comforted him softly. Qing Hung couldn't help but laugh. How could sovereign ancestor Juexian's Tao injury be so easily healed? "Don't worry about me." Lin Sun thought for a while and asked, "Senior brother, what's the purpose of this 100 Sects Dharma conference?" In Qingfeng's memories, there was no information related to this 100 Sect assembly. Qing Hung said casually, "The first reason is because the Immortal Pavilion wants to select some powerful figures who have hopes of becoming immortal. The second reason is related to the hunt for favored." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes imperceptibly. "Favored?" Qing Hung sighed lightly. "Since ancient times until now, there have been numerous favored that have appeared in our Tao development world. At the beginning, all of them were extremely weak, but along with the passage of time, their cultivations were able to transform by leaps and bounds, and most of them were able to attain the eternal Tao and transcendence realm. Every single one of them was like a supreme legend." After pausing for a while, he continued, "Just like this time, the first immortal of the Immortal Pavilion, Zhu Cheng, along with 6 other Heaven's Mandate envoys, gave an order to kill a favored called Lin Sun. During this 100 Sect assembly, the immortal of the Immortal Pavilion gave a tough order. He said that if any sect dared to not report it, they would be exterminated if they were found out." Knowing this, Lin Sun sneered in his heart. The more they threatened, the more it proved that the Heaven's Mandate envoys had yet to find any clues related to him. After chatting for a while, Lin Sun saw that Qing Heng's face was filled with exhaustion, so he immediately bid farewell and left. Returning to his residence, Lin Sun lay on the rocking chair alone. Recalling the scenes of his conversation with Qing Hung, a cold expression gradually appeared in his eyes. Tian Ruojing? Heaven's Mandate envoys? Heaven's Mandate envoys? In my eyes, what is she? Since a good karma has been formed, I will naturally repay it. If it leads to bad karma, I will eliminate it. The news of Qing Heng's injuries shook the entire celestial sect. Anger was fermenting in everyone's heart. On that day, Headmaster Fu Yunzi ordered that no one was allowed to go to the celestial sect to provoke them. Once discovered, they would be expelled from the sect. This made all the disciples of the celestial sect feel very sullen, who didn't know that the sect was planning to keep the peace and endure silently. Chapter 3286. The entire celestial sect, who had nowhere to vent their anger, started to dislike Qing Feng even more. Many people even thought that he was the culprit who caused Great Elder Qing Hung to be injured. In secret, voices of criticism and criticism resounded out, and most of them were directed at Supreme Elder Qing Feng. Lin Sun ignored it and didn't care about it. At present, he must keep a low profile and accumulate his cultivation. What Celestial Sect didn't expect was that on the third day after Qing Hung came back injured, Tian Ruojing, the highest elder of Celestial Sect, came to visit alone. At the 100 Sect Assembly, it was Tian Ruojing who seriously injured Qing Hung, which aroused the anger of Celestial Sect. But now, she came to Celestial Sect. What was she going to do? Swagger? Or was he going to take further revenge? In any case, Tian Ruojing's current status was completely different from before. Even if he resisted and rejected her in his heart, Fu Yunzi still came in person. But when he learned the purpose of Tian Ruojing's visit, he was surprised. She came to find Qing Feng, the highest elder. Sutra's Pavilion. When he learned that Tian Ruojing was waiting for him in the reception hall of Celestial Sect, Lin Sun couldn't help raising his eyebrows. What was this woman doing here? After thinking about it, Lin Sun got up and went straight to her. He wanted to see what this woman, who almost destroyed Qing Feng, came for. Reception hall. Tian Ruojing sat there alone in a snow-white dress. Her black hair was like a waterfall. Her facial features were delicate. Her skin was smooth, and under her black eyebrows was a pair of eyes as bright as stars. At this moment, sitting there casually, she was like a fairy descending to the mortal world with a transcendent aura. When Lin Sun came to the hall and saw this woman for the first time, he inexplicably felt a sour and excited emotion in his heart, which made his eyes become strange. This was the instinctive emotion of Qing Feng. But only for a moment. Lin Sun suppressed it and walked into the hall. Tian Ruojing's eyes fell on him at the first time, full of indifference, without a trace of emotion on her face. It was as if a superior was indifferently looking at an ant on the ground. "What are you looking for me for?" Sitting in the chair, Lin Sun looked at Tian Ruojing opposite him. Looking at the looming arrogance between her eyebrows, he couldn't help but feel amused. A long time ago, when he was still in the eternal true world, forget those Zhu Shui emperor's ancestors. Even the immortals had to lower their heads when they saw him. After experiencing the battles in the Sea of Destiny and entering the ruins of myriad Tao, the boundless Tao lords on the eternal Tao path could only bow before him. Now, a mere peerless martial monarch ancestor was putting on airs in front of him. How ridiculous was that? Tian Ruojing was slightly stunned and seemed to be slightly surprised that the Green Summit would speak to her like this. She said, "Is it because I injured the foundation of your senior brother's Grand Tao that you've started to become hostile towards me?" Lin Sun said, "You're not planning to be my Taoist companion, are you?" A wisp of coldness suffused the depths of Tian Ruojing's eyes as she said, "Become Tao companions? Huh, only you, Qing Feng, would be so ignorant and laughable in this world. All those years ago, since the moment your foundation in the Grand Tao was heavily injured, you and I weren't people of the same world since long ago. But what about you? You didn't recognize reality clearly, and you've always bitterly pestered me during these past few years, causing countless jokes. I'm very curious about it. Don't you feel ashamed?" Lin Sun frowned. But before he could speak, Tian Ruojing's eyes were filled with sarcasm. She said, "The bright moon in the sky will not associate with the dust on the ground. This is a well-known fact, but only you refuse to accept this reality. Look at what you've done over the years, and then look at your reputation in the cultivation world. How sad it is." For some unknown reason, the calmer Qing Feng appeared. The more indescribable rage surged in Tian Ruojing's heart. But to her surprise, even if he was so sarcastic, there was no sign of Qing Feng being irritated. He was as calm as ever. Sure enough, just like those people said, you don't care about your reputation at all. You have no sense of shame in your heart. I really don't know what's the point of a waste like you living in this world. Tian Ruojing said coldly. Are you done? Lin Sun asked. His indifferent attitude made Tian Ruojing feel suffocated. At the same time, she faintly felt strange. After so many years, wasn't this guy infatuated with her? Why was he so calm now? I also have a lot of things to ask you, Lin Sun said. Hearing this, Tian Ruojing's expression became cold. She seemed to have guessed what he was going to ask and said, If you want to say that I promised to marry you, I advise you not to ask about it. You'll only humiliate yourself if you ask. Lin Sun said, I just want to know that even if you don't want to marry me, why don't you give me a clear answer? Why do you always let me have a glimmer of hope and wait for you until now? Tian Ruojing seemed to feel very funny and said, Qing Feng, if you are an ordinary person, who will be so stupid as you? Don't you understand that the reason why I don't see you is that I refuse you? Lin Sun shook his head. No, you are worried. What am I worried about? Tian Ruojing was stunned. Lin Sun looked into her eyes and said, You are worried that I will tell others that I saved your life in the secret realm and that you promised to marry me. If this is known, it will be a great blow to your reputation. After all, I suffered a Taoist injury because I saved you. Tian Ruojing's pupil shrank. Lin Sun continued, So, you don't dare to cut off the relationship with me immediately. You should drag it on as long as you can. As time goes on, when I tell others what happened in those years, people will only think that I was angry and slandered you. After all, I am a laughingstock in people's eyes, and you, Tian Ruojing, have long been the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect. Who will believe what I said? Tian Ruojing stared at Lin Sun for a moment. She seemed to be very surprised and said, It seems that you are not stupid. Why did you do such stupid things in these years? Lin Sun said, What you think is stupid is my infatuation and waiting from the bottom of my heart. But now I have seen through it. A touch of sarcasm appeared on Tian Ruojing's beautiful face. So what? Can you still take revenge on me in your current situation? As I said before, even if you come to your senses, you are still a good-for-nothing and can hardly make any progress in the reincarnation developing realm in this life. But I am different. In 10 years, I will enter Immortal Pavilion to prepare for the immortality. If that time comes, you and I are doomed to have no more intersection. Her voice was cold and indifferent, and she did not hide her contempt for Qing Feng. Lin Sun glanced at her and said, Let's get down to business. Tian Ruojing said, Well, since you have clearly realized that you are unbearable, I might as well speak frankly. From now on, if I know any rumors that are unfavorable to my reputation, Celestial Spirit sect will no longer exist. I believe you should know how serious the consequences are. Lin Sun asked, Since you are so worried, why don't you kill me? Tian Ruojing glanced at him coldly and said, You saved my life. How can I kill you? I won't let you die. I want you to see how I set foot on the path to immortality step by step and stand at the top of the Tao development realm. Lin Sun laughed and pointed to his chest. It turns out that the matter of me saving your life has become a knot in your heart. In this way, you have been like a devil in my heart all these years, and I have been like a hindrance in your heart. Looking at Qing Feng's calm smile, Tian Ruojing's heart was inexplicably filled with killing intent. But in the end, she still held it back. Qing Feng, I have finished what I have to say. You should know that it is not difficult for me to destroy Celestial Spirit sect after seeing what happened to your senior brother Qing Heng. After saying that, Tian Ruojing turned and left. Watching her leave, Lin Sun also got up and planned to return to his residence. But before he walked out of the hall, he was stopped by Fu Yunzi. Martial uncle, why did she come here? Fu Yunzi looked nervous. Lin Sun said, She advised me to give up completely and not to have any designs on her. Fu Yunzi was stunned. That's all? Lin Sun said with a smile. She is such a noble person. How can she marry me? The shame of the sect? Fu Yunzi was speechless for a while. After hesitating for a while, he said in a low voice, Uncle Master, Tian Ruojing is indeed completely different from before. In 10 years, She will become an elder of the celestial pavilion. You must not be so stubborn. Lin Sun said, "Don't worry, I won't." After saying that, he also turned around and left. Fu Yunzi couldn't help feeling puzzled. He always felt that today's martial uncle seemed to be a little different. Could it be that martial uncle really let go of the obsession in his heart? If so, it is also a happy thing. Fu Yunzi murmured in his heart. Today's Tian Ruojing was no longer someone their celestial spirit sect could offend. Even if Qing Heng was hurt by her, they could only endure it. This was the reality. Celestial spirit sect. After returning to her cave residence, Tian Ruojing's state of mind had been unable to calm down. How could Qing Feng see through the karma in my heart? Tian Ruojing frowned. You are like the devil in my heart, and I'm also like the barrier in your heart. At the thought of what Qing Feng said, Tian Ruojing couldn't help but have a killing intent in her heart. Yes, Qing Feng was the barrier in her heart. The reason was very simple. Qing Feng once saved her life, which also touched her. She even made a vow to stay with Qing Feng for the rest of her life. But later, she regretted it. She didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. At that time, it was not her who asked Qing Feng to save her. What's more, people would grow. What she longed for was a Taoist companion who was strong enough for her to look up to, not a waste with a problem in the foundation of Tao. In these years, Tian Ruojing had never taken this matter to heart. But as she cultivated to the level of Zhu Xian great ancestor, she began to seek the immortal way. However, she suddenly realized that the life-saving grace from back then had actually become a negative karma in her heart. Therefore, she would take the initiative to see Qing Feng and try to completely cut off this barrier. But now, Tian Ruojing suddenly found that after meeting with Qing Feng, not only did she not solve this problem, but her state of mind was sinking deeper and deeper into this barrier. Qing Feng, you really do harm to people. Tian Ruojing's heart surged with unspeakable anger. P.S. Looking down, there's still the 4th chapter to make up for the explosive chapter that Awadara Alliance mastered last month. Chapter 3287. Tian Ruojing didn't expect that a good-for-nothing at the reincarnation developing realm would aggravate her negative karma. After a long moment of silence, her beautiful eyes were suffused with a wisp of resolution. She would be harmed if she didn't make a decision. Sect Master, I have something I need you to do. One day later, Tian Ruojing found the leader of the Celestial Spirit sect, Wen Tiang. Please give me your orders, Uncle Master. Wen Tiang quickly agreed. 10 years later, Tian Ruojing would become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion, which made Wen Tiang even more respectful. Bring people to the Celestial sect and bring that good-for-nothing Qing Feng here. Tian Ruojing looked indifferent. If they don't agree, just do it. Wen Tiang was shocked. Even though he had many doubts and puzzles, he still accepted the order and left in a hurry. I'll keep you by my side. I don't believe I can't cut you off. Tian Ruojing's eyes were full of ruthlessness. Leader, bad news. The leader of the Celestial Spirit sect has brought people here and threatened to hand over Uncle Qing Feng. Otherwise, we'll bear the consequences. A panicked voice sounded in the Celestial Spirit sect. Leader Fu Yunzi was alarmed, followed by Supreme Elder Qing Heng, Qing Geng, and a group of big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect. They were all very surprised. Tian Ruojing came to see Qing Feng alone yesterday. Why did the Celestial Spirit sect come to ask for him after only one day? In the past, Uncle Qing Feng would be stopped every time he went to the Celestial Spirit sect. This time, they took the initiative to take him away. It's really strange. Someone murmured. Could it be that Uncle Qing Feng offended Tian Ruojing yesterday? Someone frowned. Those with good intentions don't come. When Tiang has made such a big show, I'm afraid today's matter won't be easy. Someone looked gloomy. Send someone to find your Uncle Qing Feng and ask him to come quickly. Let's go to the mountain gate first. Qing Heng ordered. In front of the Celestial Spirit sect, the leader of the Celestial Spirit sect, Wen Tiang, and a group of big shots gathered together to form a powerful camp. There were 2 ancestral elders in this camp, and a group of great emperors who were Zhu Shui's elders. It could be said that apart from Tian Ruojing, the Celestial Spirit sect had almost sent out their most powerful force. When Qing Heng, Qing Geng, Fu Yunzi, and the others saw this scene, their expressions became slightly solemn. When Tian, what is the meaning of this? Patriarch Fu Yunzi said in a deep voice. Wen Tian said indifferently, under the order of Grand Elder Tian Ruojing, I'd like to invite your sect's Grand Elder Qing Feng to come with us. He was dressed in an official robe, and he was a rank 8 martial emperor. Is there a reason? Fu Yunzi asked again. Why is there a need for a reason? When Tian laughed, Fu Yunzi, is my sect's Grand Elder Tian Ruojing's order not effective? His voice was filled with arrogance. Which sect in the Eastern Territory didn't know that Tian Ruojing was about to soar into the sky and become an elder of the Celestial Pavilion? Those who knew what was good for them should know what to do. Fu Yunzi and the others all had gloomy expressions on their faces. When Tian said leisurely, everyone, for you, Qing Feng is a disgrace. In my opinion, you won't become enemies with the Celestial Spirit sect because of this, right? Ridiculous. If we hand him over like this, it will show that the Celestial Spirit sect is incompetent. Qing Heng couldn't help but say coldly. Wen Tian snorted coldly. Qing Heng, you have hurt the foundation of the great Tao, and the injuries on your body have not healed yet. If you don't care about the life and death of the Celestial Spirit sect, you can choose to go to war with the Celestial Spirit sect. His words made the faces of Fu Yunzi and the others change uncertainly. Just because of Qing Feng, was it worth fighting with the Celestial Spirit sect? What's more, this was equivalent to completely offending Tian Ruojing. Martial uncle, this matter, a Celestial Spirit sect elder said hesitantly. After saying that, Qing Heng said angrily, you want me to abandon Qing Feng? That awe-inspiring gaze made the Celestial Spirit sect elder tremble. He quickly shook his head and said, I don't dare. Seeing this, Wen Tian couldn't help but say coldly, Qing Heng, you are determined to protect Qing Feng, but the Celestial Spirit sect doesn't think so. Are you sure you want to let the whole Celestial Spirit sect suffer because of a trash like Qing Feng? The atmosphere was oppressive. The expressions of the big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect were uncertain. Handing over Qing Feng in exchange for the whole sect to avoid a disaster. To most of them, this was something acceptable. The reason was very simple. All these years, Qing Feng was the shame of the sect and had humiliated the Celestial Spirit sect countless times. If it wasn't for Qing Heng's protection, who knows how many people would have already expelled him from the sect. Sect leader, what do you think? Qing Heng looked at Fu Yunzi. His heart was already somewhat desolate. How could he not know how the people of the sect looked at Qing Feng? At this moment of life and death for the sect, of course they would rather sacrifice Qing Feng in exchange for a moment of peace. The others also looked at Fu Yunzi. Fu Yunzi was silent for a moment and said, Martial uncle, in my opinion, we can't hand him over. Doing this is like holding firewood to put out a fire. As long as the firewood is not extinguished, the fire will not be extinguished. If we give in today, in the future, if the Celestial Spirit sect takes an inch and wants a foot, won't we have to hand over more people? This opening must not be opened. As he finished speaking, his expression became extremely resolute. Many people's hearts sank. Qing Heng revealed a touch of relief. Fu Yunzi still had the strength of character. But at this time, Qing Geng was angry and said sternly, Nonsense! As a sect leader, you want to sacrifice the rest of the sect for a trash like Qing Feng? Do you know how heavy the price we will pay for doing this? Qing Heng frowned. Fu Yunzi's expression also changed. Looking at the others, they seemed to have found their backbone and began to follow Qing Geng's lead. Qing Geng looked at Qing Heng. Senior brother, you can protect that trash Qing Feng, but don't think of dragging the whole Celestial Spirit sect down. For this matter, I agree to hand over Qing Feng. I also agree with Senior Uncle Qing Geng's decision. Some of the elders hesitated for a moment, but also gritted their teeth and expressed their support for Qin Gong. And some of the other elders were silent. The situation suddenly became complicated. This scene was seen by Wen Tuyong and the others in the distance, and they all secretly sneered. Who could not see that the Celestial Spirits sect was in chaos? You all think that I am protecting Qing Feng, but how do you know that once we do this today, the Celestial Spirits sect will be nibbled away step by step, and it will decline? Qing Hung let out a long sigh. Fine, I will leave with Qing Feng, so that you can avoid the disaster in front of you. Senior uncle, I will go with you. Fu Yinzi said angrily. Everything that happened in front of him was difficult for him to accept. In the past, he never thought that such a big Celestial Spirit sect would actually expose so many problems when they encountered a crisis, and it seemed so unbearable, especially the choice of Qin Gong and the other elders. It made his heart even more cold. As long as they didn't encounter danger, everyone could coexist peacefully for a while. Once they encountered danger, many of their true faces were exposed. As the saying goes, those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Fu Yinzi was very clear that after this incident, the Celestial Spirit sect was destined to decline and decline, and he would rather die in battle today than live in this world. Good, good, good. Such a big Celestial Spirit sect. You, Fu Yinzi, did not let me down. Qing Hung laughed happily. Then, he looked not far away. Junior brother Qing Feng, come here. Lin Sun had already arrived in front of the mountain gate and saw all of this, but his heart was not affected. He had seen too many similar things in the past. In the face of a disaster, a person's character could often be seen, and the atmosphere of a sect could also be seen. And these big figures of the Celestial Spirit sect, indeed, lacked some foundation. They only cared about the gains and losses in front of them, and did not know that after this incident, they were destined to become food on the plate of the Celestial Spirit sect. Senior brother, we don't have to leave today. Lin Sun said softly. Celestial sect being able to achieve its current status is all thanks to you, senior brother. Fu Yinzi has also put in a lot of effort for the sect. This is your place. How can you let others ruin it? As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. It seemed that they did not expect that such a shame of the sect would dare to boast shamelessly at this time. Qing Feng, if it weren't for you, how could the sect encounter today's crisis? Qin Gong's face darkened, and he shouted sternly. The other elders also glared at Lin Sun. Junior brother, don't argue with them. Qing Hung let out a long sigh. I really don't want to waste my breath on them. Lin Sun said, and looked at Wen Tiang and the others in the distance. Today's matter, indeed, started because of me, then let me solve it. His eyes were calm, and he had made a decision in his heart. He had been low-key and enduring for more than a year. Now that he encountered such a crisis, if he continued to endure, he would feel ashamed of Qing Heng's protection. You? In the distance, when Tiang could not help but be stunned, and then laughed. You, the shame of the Celestial Spirit sect, dared to say such big words. You are simply insane. Beside him, the big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect also laughed and were amused. For 900 years, in their cognition, Qing Feng was a joke, a good-for-nothing who had shamed the Celestial Spirit sect countless times. It was too funny that such a guy should boast shamelessly at this moment. Qing Gong and the other elders only felt that they had lost face, and an indescribable sense of shame surged in their hearts. This Qing Feng simply lost their face. At this time, in the camp of the Celestial Spirit sect, a young man with white hair and beard laughed and said, Qing Feng, don't you want to solve today's matter alone? Come on, obediently surrender, so that we don't have to do it again. Okay. Lin Sun also laughed, and there was a cold luster flashing in the depths of his eyes. He walked towards the distance. Qing Hung stretched out his hand to stop him, but was stopped by an invisible force. At the same time, a voice sounded in his ear. Senior brother, there is one thing I haven't told you, but later you may understand. The voice was still drifting, and Lin Sun's figure had disappeared. Chapter 3288. Seeing Lin Sun leave the mountain gate alone, Qing Gong and the others were stunned. This guy's so-called solution was to walk into a trap? Their expressions became strange. Uncle, why didn't you stop, Uncle? Fu Yunzi was a little anxious. He didn't expect that Qin Heng, who had always protected Qin Feng, would let Qin Feng die at this moment. Let's wait and see. Qin Heng's expression was complicated as he vaguely understood. In the distance, Wen Tuyang and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter when they saw Lin Sun walking over alone. Qin Heng, I didn't expect you to give up the shame of your junior brother, Wen Tuyang sneered. The white-haired man beside him flashed and rushed towards Lin Sun. I'll capture this guy first, in case of undue trouble. Before he finished his words, Lin Sun grabbed his neck and lifted him up like a chicken. It's a good thing that undue trouble. At least you don't have to die. What do you think? Lin Sun smiled slightly, his eyes deep and indifferent. The white-haired man's pupils dilated and his face turned purple. He kept struggling, but to no avail. He couldn't even exert a trace of strength. The whole place was silent. The big shots of Celestial Spirit sect who were laughing all froze and widened their eyes. They almost thought they were seeing things. A trash of the reincarnation development realm had captured a powerful existence at the 7th level of the Emperor realm with just a wave of his hand. In the distance, Qin Geng's face stiffened and he cried out involuntarily. Looking at the others, they were also dumbfounded. Uncle, Fu Yunzi couldn't help but be stunned. Bang! The white-haired man's body turned into ashes and scattered, as easily as crushing an ant. Then, Lin Sun looked at Wen Tuyang and the others and said, Why don't you laugh? Keep laughing. Wen Tuyang and the others' expressions changed. Who the hell are you? A man in a black robe stood out, his voice gloomy. Shi Yunling, the supreme elder of Celestial Spirit sect, a Ju Ing emperor at the Perfection realm. As he walked out, a terrifying aura swept out, causing the heavens and earth to shake. In the Tao development world, Ju Ing Emperor was the strongest existence under the immortal realm, strong enough to look down on most cultivators in the world. But how could Lin Sun put such a small character in his eyes? As he strode forward, he suddenly appeared in front of Shi Yunling in the next moment and casually stretched out his hand to grab. That speed was too fast. Startled, Shi Yunling subconsciously waved his arms to block in front of him. Crack! Crack! Both of his arms were fractured and shattered, blood splattering everywhere. And his neck was grabbed by Lin Sun and lifted up at will. A great ancestor of the Ju Ing great ancestor was so weak. This scene caused everyone's scalps to go numb. They were all dumbfounded. Even if they racked their brains, they wouldn't be able to imagine how the Green Peak, which was seen as a joke by many sects and the shame of the Celestial sect, could become so terrifying in such a short amount of time. Stop! The eyes of Wen Tuyang and the others nearby almost popped out of their sockets. Shi Yunling being held hostage made them not dare to act blindly without thinking. But they were wrong. Lin Sun didn't intend to take Shi Yunling hostage at all. Bang! As his fingers exerted force, Shi Yunling's body turned into ashes. A supreme elder of the Celestial Spirit sect was killed just like that. That scene frightened Qin Heng and Fu Yunzi and made them tremble in their hearts. Looking at Wen Tuyang and the others, they were all scared out of their wits and were at a loss. They chose to escape at the first time. Even Shi Yunling was no match for Lin Sun, let alone them. Unfortunately, they didn't know how terrible their opponents were this time. Then, Lin Sun flicked his fingers in the void as casually and naturally as playing chess. But in the void, there were streams of sword qi whistling out. The sharpness was so strong that it illuminated the mountains and rivers in an instant. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Puff! Puff! With a muffled sound, strings of blood splashed out in different places. 19 people, including Wen Tuyang, the headmaster of the Celestial Spirit sect, were all pierced through by the sword qi and died between heaven and earth. When the sword qi disappeared, the scene was filled with blood. The figures of those opponents seemed to be erased from the world and disappeared completely. In the distance, everyone in the mountain gate was dumbfounded. This time, Wen Tuyang and the others came under the order of Tian Ruojing, which made these big shots of the Celestial Spirit sect regarded as a great crisis. Who would have thought that Qing Feng would slaughter all of his opponents in an instant? Martial uncle. Fu Yunzi was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Looking at the others, they were also the same. No one could calm down. Qing Heng's expression became more and more complicated, and his voice was like a whisper. Don't you understand? He is a favored. It was like a bolt from the blue hit their minds, making Qing Geng and the others suddenly understand, and their hearts sank to the bottom. Before, they all expressed that they were determined to hand over Qing Feng. If Qing Feng retaliated now, who among them could be his opponent? In the distance, Lin Sun came and cupped his hands to Qing Heng. I'm sorry to let you know this news now. Although I'm not your junior brother Qing Feng, I borrowed Qing Feng's body and memories after all. Before I leave this world, I will naturally repay you. Qing Heng took a deep breath and cupped his hands. Thank you. His heart was in a mess of complicated feelings. Could it be that you are the favored Lin Sun who is wanted by the four orthodoxies? Qing Geng suddenly realized something and cried out involuntarily. That's right. Lin Sun nodded. Lin Sun. The hearts of the others were also shocked. In the past year, the four orthodoxies had sent out countless forces to search for Lin Sun. Who would have thought that he had been hiding in their celestial spirit sect? Do you have anything else to say? Lin Sun looked at Qing Geng. Qing Geng's body stiffened, and he said with a trembling voice, What do you want to do? In the face of a crisis, you can even abandon your own sect brothers. What's the use of keeping you? As Lin Sun said, he raised his hand and slashed down with sword chi. Qing Geng was instantly killed on the spot. That bloody scene caused the others' bodies to tremble, their faces turning pale from shock. Especially those elders who were on the same side as Qing Geng. They were all scared out of their wits, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. At this time, Lin Sun looked at them. Seeing this, Qing Heng couldn't help but say, Friend, please don't kill them anymore. They are people of my celestial sect after all. Why don't you let me handle them? He was also shocked by Lin Sun's bloody and decisive means. Okay, Lin Sun agreed. Qing Heng heaved a sigh of relief and said, Thank you, fellow Taoist. No need to thank me. Lin Sun replied casually, Everyone, you don't have to worry that because of me, the celestial sect will become the target of the four great orthodoxies. It won't be long before I personally make a trip to the four great orthodoxies to put an end to my relationship with them. The enmity between the heavenly mandate envoys. Qing Heng couldn't help but be stunned. He actually planned on going to the four great orthodoxies to take revenge. The others also felt as if they were in a dream. To them, the four great sects were the most supreme and overlord powers in the Tao evolution world. Not to mention those envoys of heavenly mandate that had already stepped foot onto the eternal path towards the Tao. They were absolutely existences that they could only look up to in their entire lifetimes. But now, Lin Sun said that he wanted to go there. How could they not be shocked? Lin Sun didn't explain further. He changed the topic and said, There's no time to lose. I have to make a trip to the Celestial Spirit sect to see Tian Ruojing. Everyone can return to the sect first and wait. After saying that, he turned around and left. Qing Heng, Fu Yunzi, and the others only gradually calmed down after watching his figure disappear. Fu Yunzi said worriedly, Martial uncle, once today's matter is spread, our celestial sect will definitely be at the heart of the struggle. What should we do? Qing Heng suddenly said, Do you know how the four great orthodoxies stand at the peak of the Tao evolution world? Fu Yunzi was stunned and shook his head to indicate that he didn't know. It's because every orthodoxy has the existence of a favored. Qing Heng took a deep breath and said, Favored possess remarkable abilities, and they possess supreme techniques that we are unable to imagine. Since ancient times until now, every time a favored leaves, they will leave behind a heavenly path in the Tao development world. And the four great orthodoxies have these complete great Tao. That's why the four great orthodoxies are able to stand at the peak of the world. Fu Yunzi said, Martial uncle, what do you mean by saying this? Qing Heng said in a deep voice, At present, if our celestial sect wants to survive, there is only one way to choose. That is to completely believe in Lin Sun. Believe in him? Fu Yinzi couldn't help but think of Lin Sun's words just now. His heart trembled. Martial uncle, do you think that Lin Sun really has a chance to wipe out the enemies of the four great orthodoxies? Qing Hung said, It's not that I think so, but they will fight sooner or later, and I'd rather believe that Lin Sun will win. What if he loses? Someone couldn't help but ask. Then our celestial sect will be destroyed without a doubt. Qing Hung said expressionlessly. Everyone was silent for a while, and their hearts were in turmoil. Why are you so nervous? If Lin Sun wins, our celestial sect may usher in an unprecedented change. Qing Heng's eyes were shining, and he said, In the world, fortune and misfortune always go hand in hand. At present, it seems that Lin Sun still cares about the kindness of my junior brother Qing Feng. This is enough. As he said this, his heart was faintly excited. According to what he knew, when the favored left one day, the cultivator he borrowed would retain the immortal realm and great Tao attainments. This also meant that when Lin Sun left, his junior brother Qing Feng would realize an unimaginable change. In the void, Lin Sun walked slowly. It's only been half a year, and the 5 great Tao bodies deduced a supreme great Tao that is suitable for Qing Feng's cultivation. This is not bad. Lin Sun felt the surging cultivation of Zhu Xie Emperor in his body, and he couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. Compared to his cultivation that was close to the boundless realm, the power he possessed now was still very weak, but at least he had a certain amount of power to protect himself. And this was also the reason why he dared to reveal his identity today. After dealing with Tian Ruojing, I'll leave this area and find a secluded place to cultivate. Only by stepping on the immortal path can I compete with those mandate envoys. Lin Sun made a decision. Chapter 3289. Mooncage Mountain, the place where Celestial Spirit's sect was located. Lin Sun's figure floated over in just a quarter of an hour. Lin Sun didn't embarrass those small fries guarding the mountain gate. He quietly passed through layers of restriction formations and entered Celestial Spirit's sect. Before long, he came to a cave residence located in the depths of Mooncage Mountain. This is a good place for cultivation. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and looked at the cave residence. Then he stretched out his hand and gently knocked in the air. Buzz! The restrictive power that enveloped the cave abode immediately fluctuated violently. But there was no response for a long time. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and stepped forward. The restriction power around the cave house suddenly exploded like fragile glass, and his figure had already entered the cave house. This woman is really alert. She escaped in advance. Lin Sun glanced around the cave residence and took a cup of tea in his hand. The tea was warm, and the person drinking tea had obviously left for nearly a quarter of an hour. Half an hour ago, I killed Wen Tuyang and others in front of the gate of Celestial Spirit sect. This woman must have noticed the death of Wen Tuyang and others at that time, so she escaped as soon as possible. Realizing this, Lin Sun frowned slightly. He didn't expect that Tian Ruojing would be so vigilant. It doesn't matter if she escaped. I like to see how big a storm he can set off. Lin Sun turned around and left. However, when his figure was about to leave Celestial Spirit sect, his spiritual awareness suddenly captured a familiar figure, Wei Xian. He was the future leader of Celestial Spirit sect who had beaten Qing Feng and made him fall into a coma. At this time, Wei Xian, who was dressed in snow-white clothes and had a handsome face, was talking and laughing with a pretty woman. Suddenly, Wei Xian was stunned. He opened his eyes wide and looked into the distance. Qing Feng, why are you in my Celestial Spirit sect? Lin Sun smiled and looked at the pretty woman beside Wei Xian. If Wei Xian's cultivation was abolished, would you still agree to stay with him? The pretty woman was stunned and obviously didn't respond. You're courting death. Wei Xian's face darkened. He jumped forward and slapped at Lin Sun. However, his figure was still halfway when he suddenly trembled. Then the aura on his body flowed out like a punctured ball. In the blink of an eye, Wei Xian's cultivation had completely disappeared, and his entire person seemed to have aged many years. showing an indescribable state of fatigue. Seeing this scene, the pretty woman screamed in shock, "Ah!" Looking at the field again, Lin Sun had already disappeared. "No, no. What about my cultivation? Where's my cultivation?" Wei Xian collapsed to the ground, his body trembling. His face was filled with terror and confusion, as if he had gone mad. How could Wei Xian accept that he had suddenly fallen from a lofty and aloof cultivator back to the state of a commoner? "Senior brother, I'll go look for Master," the delicate girl said in a trembling voice. She was just about to turn around and leave when Wei Xian shouted, "Junior sister, you must not leave me. Please, please. Senior brother, I won't. Wait here, I'll go find Master." The charming woman squeezed out a smile, turned around, and left. In next to no time, a group of people flashed over hastily. It was Wei Xian's master and some great figures. Wei Xian looked around, but he did not see the figure of the delicate girl. The last trace of hope in his heart was shattered. He thought of Qing Feng and the humiliation and mockery that Qing Feng had suffered all these years. Qing Feng still has the protection of his senior brother Qing Hong, and he has the cultivation of the reincarnation developing realm. As for me, I have no cultivation. I have nothing. At this moment, Wei Xian completely broke down and went crazy. Celestial Sect. In the main hall of the sect, when Lin Sun arrived, Qing Hong, Fu Yinzi, and the others were already waiting there. "Daoist friend, did your trip go smoothly?" Qing Hong stood up and asked. Tian Ruojing escaped in advance. "If I'm not mistaken, she must have gone to the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect or the Celestial Pavilion," Lin Sun said casually. He glanced at everyone and found that whether it was Qing Hong, Fu Yinzi, or the others, they were all very calm when facing him. Obviously, they had accepted the fact that Qing Feng was a favorite. This is not good. Qing Hong frowned. With Tian Ruojing's intelligence, she must have some clues. And with her identity, whether it is the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect or the Celestial Pavilion, I'm afraid that they will send forces to investigate this matter. Once they find out that there is something wrong with your identity. He didn't finish his words, but his meaning was clear. Fu Yinzi and the others' expressions changed. No matter how the situation developed, their celestial sect was destined to be unable to stay out of it. But Lin Sun said, "If you trust me, then bring everyone in the celestial sect and leave this place with me." Fu Yinzi and the others looked at each other. Qing Hong said directly, "Okay." He had already thought about it before. Following Lin Sun was the only way to survive. Otherwise, their celestial sect would no longer have any possibility of survival. Seeing that Qing Hong had agreed, Fu Yinzi and the others also agreed. Seeing this, Lin Sun didn't hesitate anymore and immediately took action. After a while, boom! The Fengxia Spirit Mountain, where the celestial sect was entrenched, produced a violent roar, and then suddenly rose from the ground. Not far away, as Lin Sun made a gesture with both hands, the huge Fengxia Spirit Mountain continued to shrink until it became the size of a fist. Lin Sun grabbed it from the air and handed it to Qing Hong beside him. Qing Hong carefully put the Fengxia Spirit Mountain into his sleeve and said, "Taoism Pier, where are we going next? Even if the enemy wants to come here, it will take some time. Let's take this opportunity to leave this territory first. When I set foot on the path of immortality, I will find them one by one to settle accounts." Lin Sun said without hesitation. In the past, his cultivation was weak, and he could only keep a low profile in the celestial sect. But now it was different. His cultivation had reached the level of Zhu Zi Emperor ancestor, and he had the power to protect himself. If he wanted to find a place to hide, it was extremely difficult for immortals to find him. "Okay," Qing Hong nodded. "Don't worry, Taoism Pier. I have experienced many dangerous things in my life. The current situation is nothing at all," Lin Sun said with a smile. He could see that Qing Hong seemed calm, but in fact, he was extremely nervous and perturbed. After a pause, Lin Sun continued, "Also, you don't have to worry about the injury to your Dao Foundation. I will help you deal with it." Qing Hong's body trembled, and he forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Taoism peer." Lin Sun smiled and did not say anything else. He floated away with Qing Hung. 2 days later, under the sky, a group of figures with terrifying auras teleported across the sky and finally stopped at the place where the innate martial ancestor originally resided. The person in the lead was the Celestial Pavilion's Supreme Elder, Yuan Zhong. He was an immortal and transcendent realm great perfection. He was also one of the 7 Jin Heaven's mandate envoys distributed in the Tao development world. Beside him were the Immortal Pavilion's immortals, as well as several old antiques from the Crimson Cut immortal sect. All of them had immortal cultivation. Tian Ruojing was also among them. However, her cultivation of Zhu Zi Emperor ancestor was very inconspicuous in front of the group of immortals. The Fengxia Spirit Mountain has disappeared. Tian Ruojing's eyes narrowed. So, they have already sensed that something is wrong and fled in advance. Yuan Zhong, who was in the lead, frowned. He wore a long robe with wide sleeves, and his long hair was coiled into a bun. His figure was tall, and his figure was surrounded by a round and translucent immortal divine halo. It should be so. Tian Ruojing took a deep breath and said, "However, in my opinion, the more it is like this, the more it is enough to prove that there is something wrong with Qing Feng's identity. It is very likely that he is favored Lin Sun, whom all the seniors have been searching for this year. This is merely your guess. Do you have any evidence to prove it?" Someone looked at Tian Ruojing coldly. Tian Ruojing's heart trembled. After a moment of silence, she suddenly took a deep breath and said, "Although I have no evidence, I dare to guarantee with my head that Qing Feng is definitely a favored." A few days ago, she had personally gone to the Celestial Sect to meet Qing Feng. At that time, she had sensed that there was something wrong with his actions and words. When she returned to her cave residence, the more she thought about it, the more she felt uneasy. How could a trash at the reincarnation development stage determine that she had karma in her heart with just a few words? And when she ordered Wen Tuyang of the Celestial Spirit Sect to lead a group of experts to the Celestial Sect, the series of events that happened allowed Tian Ruojing to conclude that there was something strange about Qing Feng. Otherwise, how could Wen Tuyang and the others be annihilated in an instant? The Celestial Sect was merely a second-rate force, and even their strongest, Qing Hung, had Tao injuries. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for them to have the ability to annihilate Wen Tuyang and the others. Then there was only one possibility. There was something wrong with Qing Feng. This was Tian Ruojing's deduction. You are right. If there is no problem with Qing Feng's identity, the entire Celestial Sect would not have to flee this place in advance. Yuan Zhong's eyes flickered. And if the favored who borrowed Qing Feng's body and identity is really Lin Sun, then we can deduce that they must have chosen to flee as soon as they sensed that the news might have been leaked. Someone frowned and said, "This isn't good. The Tao evolution world is so huge. Where should we go to search?" Yuan Zhong couldn't help but sigh, and a wisp of gloominess appeared between his brows. "It really isn't easy to find," Tian Ruojing suddenly said. "Seniors, as far as I'm concerned, since Lin Sun chose to flee, then it undoubtedly proves that he doesn't possess the strength to go against all of you, and it's even to the extent that it's impossible for him to step foot on the eternal path." Yuan Zhong couldn't help but glance at Tian Ruojing and said, "Your analysis isn't bad. But how did you determine that he hasn't stepped foot on the eternal path?" Tian Ruojing was excited in her heart. She knew she'd drawn the attention of Yuan Zhong, so she forcefully restrained the joy in her heart and said calmly, "It's very simple. It's very simple. Only a little over a year has passed since Lin Sun entered the Tao evolution world, and according to my knowledge, practically none of the favored that entered the Tao evolution world since the ancient times were able to step foot onto the eternal Tao path in such a short period of time." Tian Ruojing paused for a moment, and when she saw everyone's gazes descend onto her, a wisp of a confident smile appeared on her peerlessly beautiful face. She said, "Earlier, I've already said that Lin Sun chose to flee and not resist. All of this is sufficient to prove that his strength is far from being able to go against an immortal. Chapter 3290. Yuan Zhong could not help but glance at Tian Ruojing and said, "Then how do you think we should find Lin's son?" Tian Ruojing was silent for a moment and said, "He left with the celestial sect 2 days ago. I'm afraid there's almost no hope of finding him now." She thought for a moment and then said, "However, I heard that all favor can only leave behind a complete grand Tao on the Tao Evolution Divine Tablet of the 4 great sects in order to leave. If we really can't find Lin's son, we can only wait near the Tao Evolution Divine Tablet." Yuan Zhong nodded. He did not expect to get a satisfactory answer from Tian Ruojing, so he was not disappointed. He looked at a person beside him and said, "Elder Lu, pass today's news to Supreme Elder Zhu Cheng. With his wisdom, he will definitely know what to do." Yes, the man called Elder Lu received the order. Celestial Pavilion. As one of the 4 orthodoxies of the Tao evolution world, Celestial Pavilion occupied a secret realm under the sky of the Tao evolution world. Lin's son actually appeared in a second-rate force called the Celestial Sect in the Eastern Territory, Zhu Cheng murmured. He was the first person on the immortal path of the Celestial Pavilion and the leader of the 7 mandate envoys of the Gen tribe. In the Tao evolution world, he could be said to be a dominating existence. After hearing the news, Zhu Cheng was quite excited at first. After all, they had been searching bitterly for more than a year and had not found any trace of Lin's son. But when he finished reading the news, Zhu Cheng frowned. Lin's son had already escaped. Searching for him again was no different than looking for a needle in a haystack. We must find him before he attains the immortal path. Otherwise, it will not be easy to kill him after he attains the immortal path. After a long time, Zhu Cheng made a decision. Send all the forces of the 4 orthodoxies and all the forces in the world to search for Lin's son. On that day, the 4 orthodoxies, Celestial Pavilion, Divine Court, Demon Sect, and almost all the immortal figures of their sects went out. On that very day, the 12 first-rate powers and numerous second-rate and third-rate powers that were scattered throughout the Tao development world received orders as well. All of them didn't dare dally and dispatch their respective forces to cooperate with the forces of the 4 great sects to launch a heaven-encompassing search and capture operation with the Eastern Territory, where the Celestial Sect resided as the center. Such a large-scale operation caused the entire world to be in an uproar, and it caused a great uproar. For a time, the matter related to Lin's son spread and discussed like a storm throughout the world. It became the topic that all the cultivators in the world paid the most attention to. In the Eastern Territory, groups of practitioners could be seen everywhere in the deserted wilderness, and all of them were searching for Lin's son. The scale of it could be said to be extremely magnificent. Half a month passed quickly. Ning'an City. In a tea house, Lin's son and Qing Hung were enjoying tea. "Fellow Taoist, the situation is getting worse." Qing Hung lowered his voice, his expression solemn. These days, he and Lin's son had been staying in Ning'an City and learned about the changes in the world. Just like at this moment, the name Lin's son was being discussed everywhere in Ning'an City. The small ones hide in the forest, while the big ones hide in the city. Most of the people in Ning'an City are ordinary people, and those cultivators mostly have low cultivations. It's absolutely impossible for us to be noticed while we're hiding here. Lin's son drank tea as he spoke with a smile. Not to mention, I like the name of this city. Qing Hung was still filled with worry. It would be bad if an eternal figure enters this city to search. Lin's son passed over a jade slip. A profound technique is recorded within this jade slip. It's sufficient to conceal one's aura and deceive the heavens. Even an eternal figure would find it difficult to see through it. Qing Hung received the jade slip and heaved a sigh of relief. And then he couldn't help but say, "Fellow Taoist, wouldn't it delay your cultivation if we continue hiding here?" Ning'an City was only an ordinary small city. It had no abodes or spirit veins, and it was utterly unable to satisfy the cultivation of Imperial Ancestor Zhu Sun. Most importantly, when Imperial Ancestor Zhu Sun cultivated, it would definitely cause a drastic change in the aura of heaven and earth. That kind of movement would definitely attract a lot of attention. For example, in this half a month, Qing Hung hadn't seen Lin cultivate at all. Obviously, he knew that once he started cultivating, he would definitely attract attention. Even if he set up restrictions to conceal it, it wouldn't work. This was because there were no spirit veins in Ning and City. When a cultivator absorbed and refined the power of heaven and earth, it would definitely cause a disturbance in the Zhou Su phenomena. Especially when imperial ancestor Zhu Sun cultivated, the disturbance would only be greater. In the eyes of an eternal figure, they could deduce a lot of information just from the disturbance caused by cultivation. But if he didn't cultivate and just hid in Ning and City, perhaps he wouldn't be discovered in a short period of time. But as time went on, there was no guarantee that there wouldn't be some unpredictable accidents. This was the problem that worried Qing Hung. Seeing Qing Heng's frown, Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. You may not know, but I've been cultivating. You just don't know. You've been cultivating? Qing Hung was startled. That's right. Lin Sun nodded, but didn't explain. Alas, I'd better not worry about it. Qing Hung shook his head and focused on drinking tea. Lin Sun didn't say anything more. He listened to the discussions in the tea house leisurely and calmly. For a favored like him, breaking through to the immortal realm wasn't difficult at all. The difficulty was that he needed to deduce a complete great way to heaven. This great way was different from his own great way. It was evolved from comprehending the heavenly way of the Tao development world. Moreover, although Lin Sun was a favored, he borrowed Qing Feng's body, soul, and memory. Therefore, when deducing this great way, he would be restricted by Qing Feng's talent and bone structure. In short, Qing Feng didn't have the talent of devouring abyss, and his bone structure wasn't very good. In addition, the heavenly way of the Tao development world was different from the world Lin Sun came from. Under these conditions, Lin Sun had to find another way to deduce a brand new great way to heaven. This was the Tao development. Moreover, developing a brand new great way to heaven was absolutely not an easy thing, even for a boundless realm figure. For example, Zhu Cheng and the other emissaries of destiny that were distributed in this world had been trapped here for countless years. Until now, they were only at the perfection realm of the immortal path of the Tao, and they were unable to deduce a Tao path that led to eternity. Only by deducing a Tao path that led to the eternal realm would a favored have the opportunity to leave the Tao development world. However, it was a piece of cake for Lin Sun to overcome these difficulties. The reason was that early on in the mortal transformation world, along with him defeating all the Tao images in the universe Tao laws, he'd simultaneously deduced numerous great ways that led to eternity from these Tao images. Now, merely deducing a great way to heaven that was suitable for Qing Feng from the universe Tao laws of the Tao development world wasn't a difficult thing for Lin Sun. For example, half a year before the return of the 5 great Tao bodies, they'd already deduced a Tao path that was truly suitable for Qing Feng. Moreover, during this half a month in Tranquility City, Lin Sun seemed to have done nothing, but the 5 great Tao bodies within his body had always been cultivating. At the bottom of it all, Qing Hung didn't know that the core of the cultivation of a favored was to comprehend the universe Tao laws and use this to develop the Tao, and it wasn't to painstakingly temper one's own cultivation. Time flowed by day after day. Another half a year passed in a flash. Lin Sun had always been staying in Tranquility City. During this period of time, there were even eternal realm figures that entered the city to search, but none of them were able to see through Lin Sun and Qing Heng's true identities. Qing Hung was completely at ease when he saw this. Moreover, during this half a year, Lin Sun had already helped him completely deal with the injuries on his foundation of the Grand Tao, and it allowed Qing Hung to rekindle hope towards his future path towards the Tao. On this day, Lin Sun, who was drinking wine in a restaurant, was suddenly stunned, and he put down the wine cup in his hand and muttered to himself, "It's almost time to leave." Qing Heng's entire body shook, and he said, "Leave? Where to?" Lin Sun said with a smile, "First gather some power to consolidate the Tao, and then go to the 4 great orthodoxies. Why get rid of those enemies? I'll leave." Qing Hung was a little confused. Taoism peer, but you still have the cultivation of Juetian Emperor ancestor. Won't you expose your identity if you do this now? Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. Wrong. My Tao has been deduced to the immortal path. What I lack now is the power that matches my Tao. Qing Hung became more and more confused. His Tao had been deduced to the immortal path, so why was his cultivation still at Juetian Emperor Ancestor Realm? Why was he still lacking power? Lin Sun was about to say something, but he suddenly stood up and walked out of the restaurant. From now on, we'll take Tranquility City as the starting point and go to Immortal Pavilion. The power collected on the way should be enough to meet the needs of my Tao. Although Qing Hung didn't understand, he hurriedly followed Lin Sun. Clatter, he suddenly noticed that Lin Sun's secret method to hide his aura had disappeared, and his cultivation of Juetian Emperor Ancestor Realm was revealed at this moment. He didn't even hide his aura anymore, and it soared up to the sky. Taoism Pier, you are. Qing Heng's expression changed. Naturally, to collect power. Taoism Pier, just follow behind me. Lin Sun clasped his hands behind his back and walked out of the city. Qing Heng's expression changed, but he still gritted his teeth and followed. Just as they walked out of the city, a whistling sound came from afar. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A group of cultivators with Emperor Realm cultivation moved through the void, and in a few blinks of an eye, they rushed out of the city. Obviously, they were attracted by the aura of Juetian Emperor Ancestor that Lin Sun revealed. It's him, Celestial Sex Supreme Elder Qing Feng. One of the emperors trembled and revealed a look of ecstasy. Finding Qing Feng was equivalent to finding favored Lin Sun. The cultivators all revealed a look of joy and found it hard to believe. They had been searching for so long, but Lin Sun had actually appeared in front of them without any disguise. How could they not be surprised? Lin Sun smiled and said leisurely, I'll give you a chance. Spread the news to inform the others, or it will be too late to call for help. Chapter 3291. The great emperor's expressions changed, and they turned to flee. Of course, they would pass on a message, but it was more important to save their lives. Everything would be over if they lost their lives. Swoosh! They teleported through the void. They came quickly, but they fled even faster. Moreover, they didn't come close and stood far away, so it was easier for them to flee now. Do you think you can escape? Lin Sun reached out with his right hand and snapped his fingers. Buzz! Invisible shackles of the great Tao emerged and suppressed the group of martial emperors, causing them to be like insects stuck in a spider's web. They were trapped there and powerless to struggle. Damn it! Their expressions changed, and fear rose in their hearts. Qing Hung, who witnessed this scene, was startled. He had merely snapped his fingers and suppressed a group of emperors. What kind of supreme technique was this? Don't panic, everyone. I'm not a bloodthirsty person, and I disdain to make things difficult for small fries like you who are ordered around. In the indifferent voice, Lin Sun had already stepped forward and flicked his fingers. Whoosh! Rays of treasure light flashed from the great emperors, and in the blink of an eye, all their treasures were plundered. Even the treasures hidden in their bodies were not spared. The great emperors' faces turned green, but compared to being slaughtered, this scene made them heave a sigh of relief. Compared to their lives, some treasures were nothing. Lin Sun said, Next, I'm going to understand some things from your souls. You'd better not struggle, or don't blame me for not warning you if your souls are injured. As he spoke, the great emperors felt a pain in their sea of consciousness, and an extremely powerful consciousness drilled into them. In the next moment, they became dazed. After a while, Lin Sun retracted his consciousness and turned to Qing Hung. Let go to the Crimson Serpent Immortal Sect first. The souls of these Emperor Realm experts allowed Lin Sun to find out that under the orders of the four great sects, the 12 first-rate powers of the Tao development world had dispatched 36 eternal figures to hold down the fort in the Crimson Serpent Immortal Sect. These undying beings were led by the Supreme Elder of the Immortal Pavilion, Yuan Zhong. They were in charge of gathering a group of emperors from various factions to patrol the mountains and rivers, searching for traces of him. Yuan Zhong was one of the 7 heavenly mandate messengers of the Gen tribe. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin, and Qing Hung swaggered away. On the other hand, the restraining force on those imperial emperors had vanished without a trace. At this moment, all of them couldn't help but feel fortunate, as if they'd survived a calamity. "This guy actually let us go," someone muttered and seemed to still not dare believe it. "Previously, I thought this favored Lin Sun was an unforgivable villain. But now it seems he's completely different from what I imagined," someone sighed. "Should we still release the news?" Someone could not help but ask. Everyone fell silent. After a while, someone said, "Didn't you hear what Lin Sun said just now? He's going to the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect to take revenge. Even if we don't spread the news, his tracks will soon be exposed to the world." Many people were shocked. Right, he revealed his tracks in front of a Ning city and didn't conceal his aura at all. He clearly doesn't intend to conceal himself anymore. So he's really going to fight with his life on the line? He only has Imperial ancestor Juing. How can he be a match for those immortals with his cultivation? Just you wait. It won't be long before the world knows whether Lin Sun is dead or alive. Lin Sun strode forward at a speed that was neither fast nor slow. He didn't conceal the aura of Imperial ancestor Ju Ying at all. When looked at from afar, he seemed like a god that illuminated the sky. "Fellow Taoist, you really intend to kill your way to the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect?" Qing Hung could not help but ask. Lin Sun's current actions were simply too bold. He didn't conceal anything at all, and he seemed to be eager to alarm his enemies and make them come looking for him. Most importantly, Lin Sun was heading towards the Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect. "I need strength, and the fastest way to obtain strength is naturally to seize the spoils of war from my enemies," Lin Sun said casually. "In other words, I really hope that my enemies will come looking for me as soon as possible." His voice carried a trace of anticipation. Qing Hung gasped, and he was completely shocked by Lin Sun's thoughts. He'd cultivated for many years, but it was the first time he'd experienced such an inconceivable thing. In next to no time, a wave of the sound of the air being torn apart resounded from afar. A group of imperial emperors flashed over from extremely far away like gods that were patrolling the landscape, and it was actually the two imperial ancestors in the lead. This group was obviously much stronger. In the Tao development world, it was sufficient for most cultivators in the world to look up to them. "Over there, it really is the Celestial Sect's Qing Feng and his senior brother, Qing Hung. We've searched high and low for them, only to find them by chance. Everyone, come with me to capture the two of them. Once we succeed, we'll definitely be heavily rewarded." The cultivators of this group were extremely excited, and their faces were covered in delight. They seemed as if they were about to capture a prey that they desired for a long time. Rumble. They charged over anxiously from afar in a threatening manner. Qing Hung couldn't help but reveal an expression of being unable to bear the sight of this. A familiar scene appeared. Lin Sun snapped his fingers, and then the figures of those cultivators that were charging overstopped in midair in unison. All of them seemed like geese that had their necks grabbed. Under their dazed, terrified, and dazed gazes, Lin Sun walked forward and took away all the treasures in their possession with a flick of his sleeve. This caused their expressions to become even more astounded, and it was extremely brilliant. Even Qing Hung couldn't help but reveal an expression of pity when he saw this. No matter who it was that suffered such a blow, that person would probably be stunned to the point of doubting life, right? In next to no time, Lin Sun and Qing Hung turned around and left. Amidst the mountains and rivers, those cultivators had recovered their freedom. All of their countenances were ghastly pale, and they seemed as if they'd lost their souls. Up until now, they still hadn't figured out why they'd been instantly restrained. This meant that if Lin Sun wanted to kill them, then it would simply be no different than crushing a group of ants. After that, group after group of cultivators flashed over successively, and all of them had been drawn over by the aura emanated by Lin Sun. All of these cultivators were from various powers, and the largest group consisted of over 10 people, while the smallest group consisted of 5 or 6 people. Moreover, there was no lack of figures at the ultimate imperial ancestor realm. It wasn't exaggerated to say that if it was Qing Hung himself, then he would have probably fallen into despair and collapsed a long time ago. After all of them were dazzling figures that stood on the Emperor Tao of the Tao development world, and every single one of them were renowned and terrifying existences. But at this moment, in Qing Heng's eyes, these groups of cultivators were like prey that had walked right into a trap. They were like prey that had walked right into a trap. They'd arrived hastily, and then they'd been stripped of all their treasures. Especially when he noticed the changes in their expressions, Qing Hung couldn't help but sigh on many occasions. Why bother? All of this allowed Qing Hung to fully realize that while Lin Sun's current cultivation seemed to be at the ultimate imperial ancestor realm, his combat strength was already capable of sweeping through all cultivators at the same cultivation realm in the world. The news of Lin Sun's appearance had spread, and it entered into the ears of all the eternal figures of the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect in the shortest amount of time possible. In an instant, all of them were excited and excited. This fiend has finally appeared, and the time to exterminate him has finally come. Some people were extremely smug. Haha, I knew long ago that in our inescapable search and capture operation, he's destined to have nowhere to hide, nowhere to hide. Someone laughed and said, these eternal figures from the various first-rate factions were all eager to make a move. Seeing this, the Grand Elder of the Immortal Pavilion, Yuan Zhong, frowned and said coldly, do you really think that Lin Sun is so easy to deal with? This one sentence caused the undying beings to be startled. Don't blame me for speaking harshly. In the eyes of us favored, you're just a group of frogs at the bottom of a well. You don't even know what a favorite is. Yuan Zhong said coldly. The eternal figure's expressions flickered, but no one dared to refute him. Yuan Zhong said, Lin Sun's appearance is naturally a good thing, but we can't be careless because of this. On the contrary, we need to be even more cautious and careful. Someone couldn't help but whisper, Lord Yuan Zhong, according to the information we received, Lin Sun still has the cultivation of sovereign ancestor Ju Sun and hasn't set foot on the immortal path. If that's the case, why are we so afraid of him? The others didn't understand either. Yuan Zhong said coldly, then did you notice that not only has Lin Sun shown himself, but he's also rushing over to the Scarlet Cut Immortal Sect? That everyone's eyes flashed. I believe that all of this means that Lin Sun most likely has enough power to fight against immortals. That's why he dares to come to us so boldly. Tian Ruojing, who was standing next to Yuan Zhong, suddenly said, in this kind of situation, it's not a bad thing to be a bit more careful. In the past, these eternal figures wouldn't even place a sovereign ancestor like Tian Ruojing in their eyes. But it was different now. They all knew that Yuan Zhong valued Tian Ruojing and had kept her by his side during this period of time. Then what do you think we should do? Asked Yuan Zhong. Tian Ruojing muttered, wait for him to come to us. That's the only way we can gather all our forces to eliminate him. Of course, I'm very doubtful if he really dares to come. After all, there's so many seniors here. Any ordinary person wouldn't do something so stupid. Yuan Zhong said, waiting for him to come is exactly what I think. But in the end, you still don't understand what a favorite is, and you don't understand how dangerous Lin Sun is. He seemed to sigh and murmured, if he was an ordinary favored, how could we 7 heavenly envoys attach so much importance to him? Why would we mobilize all the forces in the world to hunt him down? He swept his gaze over everyone and said, to put it bluntly, you will only have a chance to kill him before he sets foot on the immortal path. But once he sets foot on the immortal path, you people won't be enough for him to kill. Everyone's expressions changed. Chapter 3292. Yuan Zhong was a Grand Elder of the Immortal Pavilion, and he was also a favored. His words also made those undying beings' views towards Lin Sun subtly change, their expressions becoming slightly more serious. Tian Ruojing couldn't help but say, what you mean is that it's very likely that Lin Sun will kill his way to the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect. Yuan Zhong muttered, it's hard to say, but it's never a bad thing to be prepared. Everyone nodded subconsciously. Lai Yong. Yuan Zhong looked at a white-robed man and said, from now on, You will be in charge of commanding all the forces here. If Lin Sun comes, try your best to take him down." The white-robed man was called Lai Yong, and he was a supreme elder of the Crimson Serpent sect. He was an existence that had stepped foot onto the eternal path towards the rebirth god realm. Yes, Lai Yong accepted the order solemnly. On that day, Yuan Zhong brought Tian Ruojing back to the Celestial Pavilion. "My lord, what are we going to do by returning to the Celestial Pavilion now?" On the way, Tian Ruojing couldn't help but ask. The Crimson Serpent Immortal sect has already become a place of trouble, and fortune and calamity are difficult to predict. For safety's sake, I should naturally leave. Yuan Zhong's eyes flashed as he said casually, "If Lin Sun comes, we can use Lai Yong and the other immortals to test Lin Sun's current capabilities." Tian Ruojing's expression changed slightly, and she felt a chill in her heart. She did not expect that Yuan Zhong would use the lives of Lai Yong and the others to test Lin Sun. If Lai Yong and the others won, then so be it. But if he lost, he would have no chance of surviving. Yuan Zhong glanced at Tian Ruojing and said, "Do you think I'm too cold and heartless?" Tian Ruojing shuddered and whispered, "My lord has his own considerations. How would I dare to speculate?" Yuan Zhong grinned and said, "There's no harm in telling you that if it wasn't for the Tao development world, those eternal figures aren't qualified to be pawns for us." His voice was filled with disdain and arrogance. Thinking about it, which favored wasn't a terrifying existence that had stepped into the boundless, eternal Tao. In their eyes, undying beings were indeed very weak. Of course, Tian Ruojing didn't understand. She was just a great ancestor. However, she was very smart. She never speculated about things she didn't understand. It was precisely because of this that Yuan Zhong treated her differently and brought her along. I only hope that Lai Yong and the others will be able to succeed. Otherwise, this matter will really be troublesome. Yuan Zhong seemed as if he was talking to himself, and the light in his eyes changed indeterminately. He didn't tell Tian Ruojing that he left the Scarlet Serpent Immortal sect because he thought of a possibility. Presently, Lin Sun had developed a complete path towards the eternal Tao. If that was the case, although Lin Sun looked like Zhu Xian's great ancestor, as long as he had enough power, his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds, and he would reach the immortal realm. This was the reason why Yuan Zhong had left the Crimson Refinement Immortal sect. He needed to return to the Celestial Pavilion to discuss countermeasures with Zhu Cheng and the other Heavenly Mandate envoys. At the end of the day, it's all because I couldn't kill you when he was still weak, which led to today's events. Yuan Zhong sighed in his heart. In the next few days, the atmosphere in the Crimson Cut Immortal sect was extremely somber. 36 undying beings, led by Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect's Supreme Elder Lai Yong, recuperated and made ample preparations. However, as time passed, as more and more news flew in like snowflakes, that austere aura, the atmosphere was also shrouded in a heavy and oppressive shadow. 57 of them have been defeated by Lin Sun. 54 of them have been defeated by him. Scarlet Serpent Immortal Sect, within a palace, an undying said solemnly, "The scariest thing is that none of Lin Sun's opponents were able to last a single move. The other undying beings' expressions were also uncertain." Over the past few days, although there were many pieces of news, the contents were shockingly similar. Lin Sun was rushing towards the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect, and all the cultivators that tried to obstruct him on the way had been crushed. Who wouldn't be vigilant? Someone muttered, "He is strong, but according to the reports, he is only a progenitor of great Emperor Juing." Don't forget, Lord Yuan Zhong once said that favored can't be judged by common sense. This Lin Sun has already defeated so many people. How could he not know that we are guarding this place? But he is still rushing towards the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect. I'm afraid he really has the power to fight against undying beings. Someone was deeply worried. What are we afraid of? We are 36 undying beings. How can we not fight against them alone? Someone else was indifferent. There is no need to argue. Lai Yong said solemnly, "A few days ago, when Lord Yuan Zhong left, he told us to face him seriously. If he really dares to attack, we will just kill him. His voice was filled with undisguised killing intent. This was the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect, and he was the supreme elder of the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect. Facing such a situation, the only thing he could do was to guard this place. These days, Qing Hung was in a completely numb state. Along the way, he saw too many cultivators charging over aggressively, and then being turned into fish on a chopping board, robbed by Lin Sun one by one. Among those cultivators, there were too many famous and powerful existences. In the past, they were all characters that could summon the wind and summon the rain in the Dao development world. It was even to the extent that some ferocious figures were sufficient to make Qing Hung feel extremely fearful. But before Lin Sun, they suffered the same fate. They were like moths that flew into a flame, beasts that walked into a trap. Not a single one of them was able to escape Lin Sun's plunder. Moreover, not a single one of them had been able to escape. When he saw such scenes on numerous occasions, Qing Heng's terror at the beginning had become numb. Every single time he saw cultivators charge over, his heart wouldn't fluctuate at all. The Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect is up ahead, right? Suddenly, Lin Sun's voice resounded by Qing Heng's ears. The latter was first stunned, and then he suddenly recovered from his numb state. An expanse of mountains had appeared in the distance. They were covered in towering peaks, rosy clouds, and a myriad of strands of boundlessly brilliant divine radiance descended from the sky. Windcliff Mountain. Yes, that's where the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect resides. Windcliff Mountain. Qing Heng's expression became serious, while anxiousness and anxiety that he hadn't felt for a long time started to spread throughout his body. He already knew that there were 36 immortal figures residing in the Crimson Refinement Immortal Sect now, and every single one of them could be said to be a terrifying overlord that he could look up to. Yet now, Lin Sun had slaughtered his way over and was about to start a battle with these terrifying overlords. How could Qing Hung not be nervous? Fellow Taoist, have you gathered enough strength? Qing Hung couldn't help but ask. Lin Sun shook his head. I'm still lacking a lot. However, it should be barely enough if I capture these immortal figures here. I'm still lacking a lot. Qing Hung was stunned. He was both worried and speechless. If that was the case, then what could he use to fight those immortal figures? Just stand here and don't move. I'll go. Come. Lin Sun glanced at Qing Hung and flashed straight towards the distance. Qing Hung was just about to chase after Lin Sun when he found his figure was confined there by an invisible force, and he was utterly unable to take another step forward. Fellow Taoist, you must be careful. Qing Hung reminded anxiously. It's those enemies that should be careful. Lin Sun said without turning back. The corners of Qing Heng's mouth twitched. He was really puzzled as to why Lin Sun was still so confident at a time like this. Shouldn't he be more cautious in the face of a formidable enemy? Seeing Lin Sun's lonely figure gradually approaching the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect, Qing Hung felt for the first time that his previous understanding of cultivation was greatly impacted. Woo woo woo, a desolate horn sound came from the Wind Cliff Mountain, and the world was instantly filled with a murderous and oppressive aura. Obviously, those bigwigs in the Crimson Cut Immortal Sect had already noticed Lin Sun's arrival, and they reacted immediately. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Terrifying immortal auras rushed out from the Wind Cliff Mountain one after another, like divine rainbows flashing across the sky, startling the 9 heavens and 10 earths. They were impressively the 36 immortal existences, including Lai Yo. Along with their appearance, the world lost its color, the mountains and rivers dimmed, and an invisible and terrifying pressure spread like a tide, causing Qing Hung, who was extremely far away, to hold his breath and change his expression in shock. Such a lineup even made him, the Zhu Xian Emperor's state of mind, feel like collapsing. Lin Sun, you actually dare to come here? A surprised voice rang out. The one who spoke was a purple-robed, white-haired youth, carrying a huge golden saber on his back, and the immortal halo on his body was as bright as the sun, shining brightly. If I didn't come, Wouldn't all of you have waited for so many days in vain? Lin Sun smiled, and the wind was calm. He was alone, standing in the void, and didn't have much shocking aura on him, but his calm and confident attitude made the immortal existences involuntarily raise their eyebrows. We are also following orders. As long as you choose to surrender, we naturally won't make things difficult for you, Lai Yong said in a low voice. Lin Sun was too calm. Even though his body was only surging with the Ju Xian Emperor's aura, it made him feel unfathomable. I naturally know that you are all following orders, and I don't want to make things difficult for you. How about this? As long as you hand over your treasures, I will leave immediately. How about it? Lin Sun said with a smile. The immortal existences were stunned. This was the first time they were threatened like this, so much so that their expressions became somewhat ugly. This guy, did he really think that the immortal existences were just decorations? If you want us to hand over our treasures, that's fine, but you have to defeat us first. The purple-robed, white-haired youth said coldly. Why not? Lin Sun sneered and stepped into the air, heading forward. Rumble. At the same time, the aura on his body erupted like a volcano that had been dormant for a long time. With every step he took, his aura skyrocketed. The heaven and earth shook, and the formless, terrifying aura grew stronger. We took 9 steps. With him as the center, the space around him suddenly collapsed, creating a sharp, whistling sound. In the distance, the 36 undying existences felt the pressure on their faces, causing their expressions to change. In the blink of an eye, Lin Sun, who was originally only at the Ju Xian Emperor's cultivation, now had the aura of a nirvana realm undying. This shook their hearts. They couldn't believe it. Chapter 3293. A strong sense of uneasiness rose up in the hearts of Lai Yong and the other undying beings. Attack. Without hesitation, they moved out together. Rumble. All sorts of blinding, undying lights surged up, intertwining into a powerful current that shook the universe. All sorts of undying Tao soldiers filled the sky. There were seals, whisks, celestial swords, cauldrons, rui. The lights were blinding and released unparalleled power. This current of power was all heading towards Lin Sun alone. The heaven and earth wailed, all things dimmed. That scene made Qing Heng's hair stand on end. But Lin Sun shook his head, seemingly disappointed. The reason was that he had experienced far too many of these scenes. Back when he was at the Heaven Longevity Realm, he could destroy them with a flip of his hand, let alone now. Rise! His sleeves fluttered. Instantly waves of sword cries resounded. An endless amount of sword intent appeared in the heaven and earth. Whoosh! A ray of sword energy appeared and swept across the sky. The combined attack of the 36 undying beings was like a piece of cloth, easily tearing a huge hole in it. It scattered like the tide. Rumbled, then a terrifying explosion resounded. The heaven and earth flipped, the sun and moon flipped. An endless amount of sword intent fell down like the Milky Way, covering the entire world. The sword intent was too strong, turning the heaven and earth white. No! Screams of fear rang out. Fellow Taoist, please show mercy. We admit defeat. Someone shouted and admitted defeat. Very quickly, the dust dispersed. The sword intent that covered the world disappeared. The mountains and rivers returned to their usual calmness. Their vision also became clear. Then, Qing Heng saw that the 36 undying beings' faces were ashen. Each of them had fear and confusion written all over their faces. And on their throats, there was a crystal-clear ray of sword energy. Qing Heng was completely dumbfounded. One strike wiped out 36 undying beings. This completely overturned their understanding, making them fall into a state of shock like never before. Looking at Lin Sun again, his robe was fluttering, standing alone, as calm and collected as before. But now, in everyone's eyes, Lin Sun was like an unparalleled god, making them feel indescribably small and powerless. No one could have imagined that a mere ancestor of Zhu Shui's level of cultivation would suddenly have such terrifying power. All of this was like a nightmare, and it was so unreal. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the air seemed to be frozen. "Now, are you all satisfied?" Lin Sun spoke indifferently. His voice drifted through the heavens and the earth, causing the bodies of Lai Yong and the other undying figures to tremble, and they seemed as if they'd awoken from a dream as they recovered from their terror. "We admit defeat," Lai Yong said bitterly. The others were also dejected. With a single strike, he had suppressed them. This made them deeply understand what it meant to be a disparity in strength. Previously, they had thought that even if Lin Sun was a favored, he wouldn't be impossible to fight against. But now they knew just how terrifying a favored like Lin Sun was. "Hand over all your treasures, and I won't make things difficult for you," Lin Sun said. The sword chi was still at their throats. This made Lai Yong and the others dare not hesitate, and they all handed over all their treasures one by one. Lin Sun stretched out his hand, and all these treasures were put into his bag. Then he asked, "Why don't I see the Supreme Elder of Immortal Pavilion, Yuan Zhong?" "Lord Yuan Zhong left a few days ago," someone said bitterly. Lin Sun was startled. He thought for a moment and then understood. He said in a mocking voice, "This guy is smart. He withdrew in advance and only left you people to test my strength." Lai Yong and the others heard this and looked at each other. Their hearts suddenly shook, as if they finally reacted. So it turned out that Yuan Zhong had already sensed something was wrong a few days ago. Their faces all turned ugly. If this was the case, they were undoubtedly a group of abandoned pawns being used. "Fellow practitioner, although you defeated many opponents these days, why didn't you kill anyone?" Seeing Lin Sun about to leave, Lai Yong couldn't help but ask. The others also turned their gazes over. "You're not my opponents." After saying this, Lin Sun floated away with Qing Hung, who was still deeply in shock. Lai Yong and the others had complicated expressions as they watched Lin Sun and the others leave, and their hearts roiled. The four great orthodoxies they served had taken them to be pawns that could be abandoned at any time. On the other hand, Lin Sun's opponent hadn't injured a single one of them, even when he occupied the upper hand. Such a comparison caused them to have indescribably complicated feelings in their hearts, and it could be said that they had mixed feelings. On this day, the news of Lin Sun suppressing 36 immortals before Wind Cliff Mountain spread out, and it caused a mighty uproar in the Tao evolution world. The powers and cultivators of the various territories were extremely shocked and stirred by it. Immortal Pavilion. Within an abode, Zhu Cheng's brows were knit tightly together when he put down the jade slip he'd just obtained. Yuan Zhong was right. Lin Sun has developed a complete path towards the eternal Tao. His voice was low. As the #1 expert of the Immortal Pavilion, Zhu Cheng was the leader of the 7 emissaries of destiny that Tribe Jin had left behind in this world, and his cultivation was unfathomable. Not far away from Zhu Cheng sat the other 6 emissaries of destiny, and they were the supreme elders of the Divine Court, Demon Sect, and Demon Sect. A few days ago, when Yuan Zhong brought Tian Ruojing back to Immortal Pavilion and told them about Lin Sun, Zhu Cheng had immediately ordered all the emissaries of destiny that were scattered in the other 3 great orthodoxies to gather. It has only been 2 years, yet this kid has comprehended the laws of this world and developed a supreme path towards the Tao that's suitable for Qing Feng. Isn't this too terrifying? Yuan Zhong's expression was solemn. If it wasn't for this, the Lord wouldn't have ordered us to find Lin Sun in the shortest amount of time no matter what and kill him while he's weak. Zhu Cheng sighed. But it's slightly too late to say all this now. With our cultivation, we've long since surpassed all the immortals in this world. Even if Lin Sun attacks us, we have nothing to fear. A skinny man in a black robe spoke in a deep voice, his eyes cold. That's right. If Lin Sun wants to leave this world, he must leave his path on the Tao Evolution Divine Tablet of Immortal Pavilion. We only need to set up a trap here and wait for him. A young woman in a green dress said softly. Zhu Cheng's gaze swept across the others, and he said in a deep voice, In these years, we've cultivated many immortals in the four great orthodoxies. It's time to put them to use. Next, we'll gather all of them and guard a mortal pavilion together, waiting for Lin Sun to walk into the trap. Also in a mortal pavilion. In a pavilion, Tian Ruojing was restless and lost in thought. Her intuition told her that Lin Sun would definitely not let her go, even if there was no enmity between her and Lin Sun. Because of the relationship with Qing Feng, things had become different. Qing Feng, Qing Feng, your life is really good. Tian Ruojing secretly gritted her teeth, her eyes full of hatred. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would have such a terrifying favorite? How could such a terrible favorite appear in the body of a trash like Qing Feng? Most importantly, Qing Feng was the obstacle in her heart to prove immortality. But obviously, if Lin Sun didn't die, it meant that Qing Feng wouldn't be in trouble, and all of this would make it almost impossible for her to prove immortality. If I had known this, I would have used all means to get rid of you that year. Tian Ruojing's beautiful face was gloomy. She didn't regret it. Even if Qing Feng saved her life that year, even if she violated her oath and refused to be Qing Feng's cultivation companion, she never regretted it all these years. Even now, she only hated herself for not killing Qing Feng at that time. Half a month later, in a mountain and river, Lin Sun opened his eyes for meditation, and the aura on his body had already shown the charm of the transcendent realm of immortality. I don't know where summer solstice is now, and how far her cultivation has reached. Lin Sun thought of summer solstice. After a while, he shook his head and stood up. Qing Heng, who had been cultivating nearby, suddenly woke up and stood up. When he felt the aura of transcendent realm from Lin Sun, his heart trembled again. Taking a deep breath, Qing Heng said, "Senior, are you planning to go to Celestial Pavilion?" Even the way he addressed Lin Sun changed. In fact, in the eyes of the peerless emperor ancestors, those who had stepped into the immortality realm were all seniors that they could only look up to and respect. Lin Sun glanced at him and said, "You should call me fellow Taoist." Qing Heng was a little embarrassed. If I'm not wrong, the Celestial Pavilion is now a dangerous place. But for me, it's not that dangerous. Lin Sun muttered, "And after I get rid of those opponents, I'm afraid it won't be long before I leave this world." As he spoke up to this point, he looked at Qing Heng. "How about this? Taoist friend, you should come with me. When the time comes, you can arrange for the Celestial Sect to cultivate in the Celestial Pavilion. This can be considered as my compensation and repayment to Qing Feng and you." Qing Heng was stunned. When he was still worried about what kind of danger Lin Sun would encounter on the way to Celestial Pavilion, Lin Sun had already thought about arranging the whole Celestial Sect in Celestial Pavilion. This made him feel unreal. How horrible the 7 Destiny Messengers were. But Lin Sun didn't pay attention to them. "Let's go." Lin Sun didn't know what Qing Heng was thinking. He was just doing what he should do. 3 days later, under a piece of sky, Lin Sun's figure floated over. Qing Heng had hidden in Fengxia Spiritual Mountain, and Fengxia Spiritual Mountain had been put away by Lin Sun. At this time, Lin Sun stood in the void with his hands behind his back, looking up at the snow-white, auspicious cloud below. After a while, he suddenly stretched out his finger and drew a line in the distance. Buzz! The snow-white, auspicious cloud rolled violently, and then an illusory door appeared. This was the entrance to Celestial Pavilion. Come to think of it, those enemies should have already been prepared. While thinking, Lin Sun took a step forward and rushed into the illusory door, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Lin Sun killed his way in like this. These days, with the spread of all kinds of news, countless practitioners had already gathered in this mountain and river. When they saw this scene, they were all in an uproar and trembled. 3 consecutive updates first, and there will be more in the evening. Chapter 3294. Within the Celestial Pavilion Secret Realm, the sky was vast, and the celestial mountains stood in great numbers. It was a scene of paradise. However, as soon as Lin Sun entered it, he was ambushed. Boom! A total of 10 transcendent realm immortals formed a formation and activated a forbidden supreme divine formation, trapping Lin Sun within it. The formation was vast and contained 100,000 stars. It connected with the power of heaven and earth, surging with wind, thunder, earth, and fire. Being trapped within it was like being trapped in hell. Even if it was a transcendent realm cultivator, he would be severely injured if not killed by such an attack. However, Lin Sun seemed to have expected this. The moment he was surrounded, he took a step in the air. Boom! Endless divine flames surged out and turned into a storm that swept across the sky. The 100,000 stars within the supreme forbidden formation were instantly drowned by the flames and turned into ashes. Following that, the power of heaven and earth, wind, thunder, earth, fire, and other miraculous images were all burned. In the end, the entire formation collapsed. As the endless flames spread, the 10 transcendent realm immortals were forced to retreat. Their expressions changed drastically. How can he be so powerful? Exclamations sounded. In the sky full of flames, Lin Sun's silhouette was like a god born from fire. The unparalleled divine aura made the transcendent realm immortals' hearts turn cold. You're not my opponent. I advise you to move aside. As Lin Sun spoke, he strode towards the distance. Kill! Stop him! However, the 10 transcendent realm immortals did not retreat. Instead, they all charged towards Lin Sun in an attempt to stop him. Lin Sun frowned slightly and no longer hesitated. Go! He extended his hand and pointed in the air. Clang! 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 The boundless rain of swords surged into the heavens, and the earth amidst clear and melodious sword howls, and they filled the sky. As the terrifying sword intent swept through the surroundings, dazzling amounts of blood instantly sprayed into the air. The 10 transcendent realm immortal silhouettes were torn apart like paper. They were all crushed by the boundless sword intent, and their bodies and souls were destroyed. If other cultivators were to witness such a scene, they would be scared silly. Zhu Cheng, as the mandate envoys of the Jin tribe, you actually sent the cultivators of this world to their deaths. Don't you feel ashamed? Your sect master Tai Chu's face has been completely lost by you, Lin Sun said loudly. His voice was like a thunderclap, and it rumbled and resounded throughout the entire secret realm. For a moment, the mountains and rivers were shaking, and the void around was in turmoil. Lin Sun's voice was everywhere in the secret realm of the Celestial Pavilion. This kid is truly arrogant. In the deepest part of the Celestial Pavilion's secret realm, there was a snow-white, crystal-clear, divine mountain. Zhu Cheng, Yuan Zhong, and the other 6 heavenly mandate envoys stood at the peak of the divine mountain. A light screen floated in front of them, showing the figure of Lin Sun, who had just charged into the Celestial Pavilion's secret realm. They had witnessed everything that had happened earlier, and all of them had grim expressions on their faces. He naturally has the right to be arrogant. Can't you see that his cultivation has already reached the transcendent realm? Zhu Cheng's expression was solemn. He took a deep breath, and a resolute look appeared on his face. According to the previous plan, let the others act as well. Lin Sun strode forward, and his divine sense spread out. Along the way, he didn't conceal himself at all, and just dashed forward openly. Boom! Soon, a group of immortal and transcendent realm existences rushed over, and all of them manipulated their secret treasures to attract the Celestial Pavilion's order power. The Celestial Pavilion's secret realm's order power began to attack Lin Sun. At this moment, Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. The Celestial Pavilion's heaven and earth order was filled with a faintly discernible aura of chaos origin. Moreover, there were also various supreme mysteries of the path of cultivation that appeared within it. As a result, the power released was terrifying beyond imagination. A part of the Celestial Pavilion's order power should come from the Divine Tao Evolution Tablet. Lin Sun vaguely understood. Rumor had it that the Divine Tao Evolution Tablet was formed from the chaos origin of the Tao world. If the favored wanted to leave this world, they needed to develop a path of cultivation that led to the heavens and imprint it on the Divine Tao Evolution Tablet. When they obtained the tablet's recognition and resonance, they would be able to attract the Chaos Tao fruit and break through the Heaven Gate. But now, the Divine Tao Evolution Tablet's power had clearly fused with the heaven and earth order of this world, and it was being borrowed by those immortal beings. When those immortal beings charged over, Lin Sun immediately attacked with all his strength. Boom! He punched out, and a vast and heavy fist energy seemed to break through the ages. It carried an indomitable momentum as it swept out mightily. The nearby void exploded, splitting apart and collapsing. And the heaven and earth order power that was borrowed by the enemy also suffered a great impact from this punch. They were ruthlessly destroyed and dispersed with a loud bang. That level of fist energy even sent the group of undyings flying back in disarray. Instantly, cries of alarm rang out. Those immortal beings' expressions changed, and they were terrified. In the end, this power doesn't belong to you, and its power isn't something you can unleash. Lin Sun shook his head slightly. As he spoke, his figure flickered. In just an instant, figures were killed one after another, and blood splattered high into the air. And in just a few breaths, those enemies were all slaughtered. Damn it, even the Divine Tao Evolution Tablet's power can't do anything to him. How is this possible? At the peak of the snow-white divine mountain in the depths of the immortal pavilion, Yuan Zhong couldn't help but be furious when he saw this scene, and he revealed an expression of disbelief. When he looked at the other envoys of destiny, all of their expressions were extremely gloomy, and their eyes were filled with seriousness. There's only one possibility. Zhu Cheng's voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Lin Sun didn't just deduce an immortal path. He even derived the profundities of the eternal path on this path. Only in this way can he resist the attack of the Divine Tao Evolution Tablet's power. These words were like a bolt out of the blue, and it caused everyone to be stunned. If that's the case, doesn't it mean that we're already inferior to him on the path of the Tao evolution? Someone's voice was low, and his expression was extremely unsightly. In the Tao evolution world, being able to deduce a great Tao that led directly to the eternal path was equivalent to possessing the opportunity to leave this world. For example, the 7 envoys of destiny like them had cultivated bitterly in this world for countless years. Yet they were still stuck at this last step and were unable to develop a path that led to the eternal path. But Lin Sun had only arrived in this world for 2 years, yet he'd already accomplished this. So how could they not suffer a blow from such a comparison? My lord is right. Not being able to annihilate him when he was weak means that our chances of dealing with him have become slim. Zhu Cheng's voice revealed a wisp of bitterness. They originally thought that Lin Sun had only deduced a complete immortal path, and in this way, they were confident in being able to annihilate him. But only now did they realize that Lin Sun had touched upon the profundities of the eternal path a long time ago, and he was far ahead of them. We must evacuate as soon as possible. Yuan Zhong gritted his teeth as he spoke. There's no chance. Zhu Cheng looked towards the distance. There was a tall figure walking over from there, and he had an extraordinary bearing and was carefree like an immortal. It was exactly Lin Sun. The hearts of Yuan Zhong and the others sank when they saw this scene. I'm sorry for making all of you wait. Far away, Lin Sun stood in the void and said calmly, we really didn't expect that in less than 2 years, fellow Taoist Lin has already developed a supreme path that leads directly to the eternal path. Now it would seem like our arrangements today are a bit laughable. Zhu Cheng let out a long sigh. Lin Sun, can we both make a compromise? We won't stop you from leaving this world, so don't force us into a dead end. Yuan Zhong spoke abruptly. The others looked at Lin Sun as well. As far as they knew, Lin Sun hadn't harmed a single opponent on his way to the crimson-cut immortal sect a few days ago. This made them subconsciously think that as long as they took the initiative to admit defeat, then Lin Sun might not make things difficult for them. A trace of ridicule appeared on the corners of Lin Sun's mouth as he said, the reason those cultivators in this world attacked me was none other than because they received your orders. Now, Don't you think it's ridiculous that you want me to let the culprits go? His words made everyone's hearts sink to the bottom. Lin Sun, even if you can kill your way out of this world, you'll still have to face the murderous intent of the bound of universe and the challenges of the path of slashing. Even if you have the chance to enter the mysterious god realm in the end, the 9 divisions of primordial god path, the ape ancestor, and the young lady will definitely not let you off. Someone said in a cold voice, "What happens in the future has nothing to do with you. Don't worry about it." Lin Sun smiled. Boom! Right at this moment, Zhu Cheng, Yuan Zhong, and the other Destiny envoys all moved and charged at Lin Sun at the first possible moment. Each of them revealed a terrifying combat strength that far surpassed those in the same realm in this world. This was the strength of favored. This was also the reason why Zhu Cheng and the others could dominate this world. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was also a favored, and a favored who was even more powerful than them. He had long developed the power of the eternal path. It seems that all of you can't wait to leave. Then I'll send you on your way. Lin Sun's carefree voice was still floating in the air when he leaped forward and slashed out with his fingers like a sword. Puff! Yuan Zhong's figure was cut into 2. Before his blood could flow, his body and soul were wiped out by the terrible sword intent. Then, as Lin Sun slashed out with his sword intent, the Destiny envoys fell one after another. It was as easy as cutting melons and vegetables. That terrifying slaughtering method didn't give the Heaven's Mandate envoys any chance to escape. In the end, only Zhu Cheng was left. Lin Sun grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. Zhu Cheng was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that the 7 of them were so fragile that they couldn't even withstand a single blow. When he realized this, it was already too late. Looking at the confusion and fear on Zhu Cheng's face, Lin Sun smiled and said, "Don't be nervous. After I search your soul, I'll send you on your way." Boom! A huge divine consciousness swept into Zhu Cheng's sea of consciousness. He blacked out and groaned in pain. A moment later, Lin Sun retracted his spiritual awareness. In his hand, Zhu Cheng, who was captured, suddenly turned into ashes and scattered between his fingers, disappearing completely. Last month, I owed the Awadara brothers 2 explosive updates. Recently, I'll try to update more every day to make up for it. Chapter 3295. From the moment Lin Sun entered the Immortal Pavilion to the moment he killed Zhu Cheng and the other 6 messengers of destiny, it was far less than a quarter of an hour. Lin Sun's speed was so fast that he killed almost all the way without encountering any worthy enemy. At this moment, he looked around and suddenly asked, "Where is Celestial Pavilion's sect master, Shui Songlu?" His voice reverberated throughout the world. "Senior, please forgive us. The Celestial Pavilion has no intention of becoming enemies with you." A fearful voice rang out, and an old man with gray hair and beard appeared even faster than the voice. He stood in the air and bowed, his face filled with apprehension. This person was Celestial Pavilion's sect master Shui Songlu, a Nirvana god realm undying existence. Your Immortal Pavilion possesses the Tao Evolution Divine Tablet, so it's naturally the easiest for favored to target you. I won't bother with that. Lin Sun glanced at him and said, "But I need you to do one thing." Shuai-Tsang Lu hurriedly replied, "Please instruct me, Senior." Lin Sun immediately told them about how to settle down the people of Celestial Sect. Shuai-Tsang Lu heaved a sigh of relief. He had thought that it would be some overboard request, but who would have thought that it was just to arrange for a few cultivators? "Senior, just leave it to me." Shuai-Tsang Lu agreed without hesitation. "After I leave this world, Qing Feng will also stay in the Celestial Pavilion. With him around, the Celestial Pavilion's power should not be weaker than before," Lin Sun said casually. Shuai-Tsang Lu's heart trembled. He knew that Lin Sun's words were actually a warning to him not to have any other thoughts. Otherwise, the existence of Green Peak would be enough to threaten the Immortal Pavilion. When Lin Sun was about to say something, he suddenly raised his eyebrows. The next moment, his figure disappeared out of thin air. Whoosh! A beautiful figure flew towards the entrance of the celestial pavilion. She wore a snow-white dress, had fair skin, and a peerlessly beautiful appearance. Shockingly, it was Tian Ruojing. However, right now, her expression was terrified. Her face was pale, and she appeared to be panicking. Seeing the entrance of the celestial pavilion appear in the distance, Tian Ruojing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. That fellow only cares about killing the enemy. I'm afraid he has long forgotten about a small character like me, right? That was even better. Just as Tian Ruojing thought of this, her face suddenly changed, and her figure stopped in midair. Right at the entrance of the celestial pavilion, a figure stood in the void. It was Qing Feng, or rather, Lin Sun. Tian Ruojing's heart sank to rock bottom. She was stunned for a moment before she suddenly cried out, "A grand favored, a supreme existence, is actually making things difficult for a minor character like me. Should I feel honored, or should I feel sorrowful?" Lin Sun looked at the woman who Qing Feng had been obsessed with for 900 years and said, "The one who tied the bell should untie it. I will solve the karma of Qing Feng." Tian Ruojing said agitatedly, "What does this matter have to do with you, Senior? Or does Senior also think that I need to apologize and repent for what happened back then? Impossible." She seemed to have gone mad, and her beautiful face twisted. "I never regretted what I did in the past. Why should I marry him just because he saved my life? Why should I be responsible for his Dao root being injured?" Lin Sun's eyes became cold. "You said that you would marry him, but you regretted it. Of course, you can regret it, and you don't care about Qingfeng's Dao injury. But don't forget who saved your life back then. Can you even turn a blind eye to the life-saving grace?" Tian Ruojing's beautiful face changed. She gritted her teeth and said, "I didn't ask him to save me back then. He took the initiative to save me. What does it have to do with me?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Even he didn't expect that a person could say such shameless words. It was such a woman who made Qing Feng infatuated with her for 900 years, which made Lin Sun feel that it was unfair for Qing Feng. "Senior," Tian Ruojing took a deep breath and said, "If you want to see me kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy, then you are wrong. I would rather die than bow my head to a trash like Qing Feng." Lin Sun said, "You're wrong. After I leave, Qing Feng will possess the cultivation of transcendent realm perfection and possess a complete supreme cultivation path. Although he'll be limited by the power of heaven and earth rules in this world and can't leave the Dao development world in this lifetime, he can always stand at the peak of the world in the Dao development world. And you are just the Jewish emperor ancestor after all." These words were like a ruthless, sharp knife stabbing into Tian Ruojing's heart, making her breathless. Her skin trembled, and her expression changed again and again. A trash who had been hated and rejected by her for 900 years would become the supreme existence that she could only look up to in the future. Such a blow made her feel like she was about to collapse. "Even so, I won't bow my head. I will only hate him more," Tian Ruojing said in a hoarse voice, and her eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly smiled. He felt that the obsession that belonged to the deepest part of Qingfeng's heart had completely disappeared at this moment. In other words, Qingfeng's obsession of 900 years was broken at this moment, and his state of mind was freed. "I forgot to tell you one thing. In your heart, Qing Feng is a karma obstacle, and in his heart, you are also like a heart demon," Lin Sun said softly. "Now, Qingfeng's heart demon has been eliminated." Tian Ruojing was stunned, and then she sat down on the ground with a thump as if she was struck by lightning. Her eyes were blank. "It turns out that you told me so much just to help Qing Feng get rid of his heart demon. But I still don't understand why you help him like this." She was very angry and puzzled. Lin Sun said, "Helping him is helping myself. If his obsession is not eliminated, I can't really leave this Dao development world. This is karma. Do you understand?" Tian Ruojing was disappointed and said bitterly, "Forgive me. I am the karma that can threaten you in this Dao development world." Lin Sun said with surprise, "You are smart. Your guess is right. If you had realized this earlier, it might have been enough to cause me great trouble. Unfortunately, your road was narrow from the beginning. After that, Lin Sun turned around and left. He didn't help Qing Feng get rid of Tian Ruojing. If his speculation was right, Tian Ruojing was destined to live in endless remorse in the future until her state of mind could no longer bear the pressure of the karma obstacle and collapsed. This kind of punishment was far more cruel than killing her. Just because he saved my life, how could I become like this? Tian Ruojing, who sat paralyzed on the ground, had a blank look in her eyes. On that day, she was mercilessly expelled by the cultivators of Immortal Pavilion and left to wander in the outside world. With Shui Kanlu, the sect master of Immortal Pavilion, personally coming forward, Qing Heng and the cultivators of Celestial Sect were arranged to cultivate in Immortal Pavilion. From this day on, they all became members of Immortal Pavilion, and there was no more Celestial Sect in this world. Qing Heng, Fu Yunzi, and the others couldn't help but feel like they were dreaming. Before this, they were just an inconspicuous second-rate force in the Eastern Territory. In the blink of an eye, they all entered Immortal Pavilion, one of the four most powerful orthodoxies in the world. Everyone in the sect had ascended to heaven in a single step. Grand Marshal Uncle is actually a favored to Chunning and Daiyin. All of this was even more bizarre, especially when they thought about how they served Lin Sun a while ago and didn't have much respect for him. They couldn't help but feel ashamed in their hearts. The two of you come here. These are the cultivation manuals that Senior Lin Sun gave to the two of you. Remember, don't leak them to others. Sect Master Fu Yunzi came and handed 2 jade strips to Chunning and Daiyin. For us. The two of them were stunned for a moment, and then started laughing foolishly. Fu Yunzi couldn't help but feel envious. He already knew that Lin Sun had defeated the 7 Heavens Mandate envoys. How could he not know that the cultivation manuals left behind by Lin Sun were bound to be extraordinary? You two foolish brats really got lucky. Fu Yunzi couldn't help but mutter. Immediately after, he also smiled. To him, the entire Celestial Sect's cultivators being able to cultivate in Immortal Pavilion was already an unimaginably fortunate thing. In the future, who would dare to say that Master Uncle Qing Feng is the shame of the sect? Fu Yunzi couldn't help but think that when favored Lin Sun left, Master Uncle Qing Feng would possess a transcendent realm immortal cultivation. At this moment, Lin Sun was looking at a strange and mysterious divine steel. This divine steel stood in the Immortal Pavilion's forbidden area. It was only 3 feet tall, and its entire body was filled with the aura of Chaos Source. There were no words on the surface of the stone steel. However, when Lin Sun looked at it, he could feel that this divine steel was imprinted with many paths leading to the heavens. Each path was complete and powerful, leading directly to the eternal realm. When he carefully sensed it, he couldn't see through the mysteries of these paths. Lin Sun wasn't surprised by this. This was because this was the divine steel of Dao Evolution World. It was formed by the chaos source of the Dao Evolution World. Favored could only imprint a complete path on it in order to attract the chaos Dao fruit and leave this world. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun suddenly transmitted his voice. Shui Kanlu was in the secret realm of Immortal Pavilion arranging various matters for the Celestial Sect's cultivators. Suddenly, Lin Sun's voice resounded in his ears. If a woman comes looking for me in the future, no matter what her name is, no matter what her identity or appearance is, please inform me at the first possible moment. Shui Kanliu's body trembled, and he solemnly accepted the order. Yes. From this day onwards, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in front of the divine steel and meditated. He was trying to comprehend the chaos source of the Dao Evolution World. The news of Lin Sun killing his way into the Immortal Pavilion, defeating the 4 great paths, unifying the transcendent realm of mortals, and killing the 7 Mandate envoys had already spread throughout the Dao Evolution World, causing an unprecedented sensation. Half a month passed in a hurry. On this day, under the sky, the white, auspicious cloud at the entrance of the Immortal Pavilion floated there as before. A man and a woman came from afar. The man was thin and was a young youth. He was cautious and nervous, looking around from time to time with vigilance. He followed closely behind the woman, as if he was afraid that she would leave him behind. The woman was only in the sea of spirit realm, and her appearance was ordinary. She looked up at the white, auspicious cloud and thought for a while. Then, she said to the youth beside her, "Wait here." The youth asked nervously, "Sister, where are you going?" The woman pointed at the white, auspicious cloud in the sky. Immortal Pavilion. As soon as he finished speaking, a wave of laughter resounded in the surroundings, and numerous murmurs of discussion resounded along with it. Many cultivators pointed at the pair of siblings while their faces were filled with ridicule. A true martial realm youth and a sea of spirit realm woman actually dared to dream of entering the Immortal Pavilion? The fifth update was delivered. Chapter 3296. There were old and young people in the mountains and rivers nearby, and they were all cultivators who desired to enter the Celestial Pavilion to cultivate. There was no lack of geniuses or people of noble birth. However, not everyone could enter the Celestial Pavilion. If one wanted to enter, one had to try their luck. Out of thousands of people, there might not even be one who could succeed. However, this still couldn't stop the cultivators of the world from coming over to try their luck. The man and the woman were obviously from poor families based on their attire and temperament. Moreover, their cultivation levels were extremely low. When they tried to enter the Celestial Pavilion, it naturally caused a lot of mockery and ridicule. There was even someone who laughed without malice. If people like them can enter the Celestial Pavilion, I'd be willing to work for them. The person who spoke was a young man of noble birth. He was dressed in a golden robe and looked very handsome. Hearing his words, the people in the surrounding area couldn't help but laugh. This made the young man, next to the woman, even more nervous. His face turned red, but he didn't dare to say anything. His embarrassed look made the young man in the golden robe laugh loudly again. However, the woman didn't seem to notice it at all. Or rather, she turned a deaf ear to it and ignored it. "Wait here." As the woman spoke, she flew into the air and approached the white, auspicious cloud in the sky. This scene silenced the crowd. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. Where did this ordinary-looking woman get the courage to go directly to the entrance of the Celestial Pavilion? Wasn't she afraid of being chased away just like that? In the past, there have been many people of noble birth or extremely talented people who went to the entrance of the Celestial Pavilion in an attempt to gain the favor of the masters of the Celestial Pavilion. However, without exception, they were all chased out and chased away. "The ignorant are indeed fearless," someone chuckled. "One look and you can tell that she came from a small place and doesn't know any rules. Does she really think that she can enter the Celestial Pavilion just because the entrance is there? Why don't you take a look at her own cultivation level and identity?" The others laughed as well. It was as if they could already see the woman being chased out. In front of the white, auspicious cloud, the woman stood in the air and directly knocked on the door. Whoosh, the auspicious cloud rolled, and an illusory door appeared. Just as the woman was about to approach, a loud shout rang out. "Who are you? How dare you barge into my Celestial Pavilion?" It was just a single voice, yet it was filled with a dignified expression. It caused the hearts of all the cultivators in this expanse of the world to tremble, and all of them went silent like cicadas in the winter. On the other hand, the gazes they shot at the woman were filled with ridicule and pity. She was about to suffer a calamity. To everyone's surprise, the woman was calm and fearless. "I'm here for Lin Sun." Lin Sun. The name seemed to have a strange magic, which shocked everyone nearby and made them gasp. This woman was too bold to call Lin Sun's name directly at the entrance of the Immortal Pavilion. On the ground, the cautious boy was also nervous, and his hands and feet were sweating. He didn't know why his sister insisted on coming here and called Lin Sun by his name. It was too bold. The atmosphere became deathly silent. However, the scene they were waiting for did not happen. The woman stood there and was not expelled. The imposing voice that came from the entrance of the Celestial Pavilion did not ring out again. This unusual scene caused everyone to be surprised and bewildered. Very soon, boom, the divine light at the entrance of the Celestial Pavilion flowed, and a mighty and dignified figure appeared out of thin air. He had gray hair and an immortal aura. My God, it's the leader of the celestial pavilion. An old man cried out involuntarily, and then he realized he had lost his composure. He hurriedly prostrated on the ground and kowtowed. I'm a descendant of the Hungliang Mountain Yu clan. Greetings, senior. Seeing this, how could the others in this expanse of the mountains and rivers not understand the identity of the mighty figure? Plop, plop. Many people immediately knelt on the ground and saluted respectfully. Greetings, senior. In the end, even the golden-robed young man and the others knelt down with devout, excited, and submissive expressions. No one had expected that the supreme leader of the celestial pavilion would show himself at this moment. Seeing this, the cautious and nervous young man panicked, and he subconsciously wanted to follow the others to kneel down. But just at this moment, the voice of the woman resounded. If you kneel down, you're not my younger brother anymore. The voice was clear and sweet. The young man was stunned and at a loss. The people who knelt on the ground were also stunned, and they almost couldn't believe their ears. Then they realized that the ordinary-looking woman standing at the entrance of the celestial pavilion had been standing there the whole time. Even when facing the leader of the celestial pavilion, she didn't show any signs of bowing to him. Everyone was stunned. Wasn't she courting death? At this moment, Shui Tasong Lu, who was worshipped like a god, retracted his aura and revealed a kind and gentle smile. He said to the woman, "Miss, please wait for a moment. Senior Lin will be here soon." The woman nodded and didn't say another word. That indifferent attitude made it seem as if she wasn't facing the leader of the celestial pavilion, whom all the cultivators in the world looked up to, but an ordinary passerby passing on news. This caused everyone to be dumbfounded. Their bodies stiffened, and their eyes were filled with confusion. What was going on? That was the leader of the celestial pavilion. How could he be so humble and kind to a woman in the spiritual ocean tier? What made everyone's scalp numb was that both the woman and the leader of the celestial pavilion appeared very natural, without a trace of discomfort. Oh, by the way, is that young man your younger brother? Shuai-tsang Lu asked softly. The woman nodded. Little friend, please come and see me. Instantly, Shuai-tsang Lu's expression became more and more kind, and he waved at the reserved young man standing on the ground. After that, he seemed to realize something and chuckled. I forgot that true martial realm martial artists are still unable to fly here. As he spoke, he landed on the ground, grabbed the young man's hand, and said with a smile, "Come with me." Then, he took the young man and flew away. Witnessing this scene, the atmosphere around the mountains and rivers became more and more silent. Everyone's eyes stared blankly, and their bodies and minds suffered an unprecedented shock. Even if they racked their brains, they still couldn't imagine how such a bizarre thing could happen in this world. After the young man was brought to the entrance of the celestial pavilion, he stood beside the woman cautiously with his head lowered, not daring to look at Shuai-tsang Lu. His heart was beating violently, and his mind was blank. He was just a young man from the countryside. How could he have imagined that he would experience such an incredible thing today? Only the woman was very calm. Voila, not long after, there was a fluctuation at the entrance of the celestial pavilion, and a figure appeared. It was Lin's son. Shuai-tsang Lu, who had been waiting, was shocked, and he bowed respectfully. Greetings, senior. Lin's son nodded, then looked at the woman and smiled. Xia Ji, you're finally here. The woman was naturally the body and soul that Xia Ji had borrowed in this world. Xia Ji pointed at the reserved and nervous young man beside her and said, Lin's son, this is Mu Xian, the younger brother of my identity. He and I depend on each other, so when I came here, I brought him along. Lin's son nodded and patted the shoulder of the young man, named Mu Xian with a smile. Little guy, don't be nervous. Come with me with your sister. He was about to enter the celestial pavilion with Xia Ji and Mu Xian, when Xia Ji pointed at the young man in a golden robe who was kneeling on the ground and said, that guy just said that if Mu Xian and I could enter the celestial pavilion, he would work like a horse for us. But in my opinion, It's just wishful thinking. I don't need this kind of person to work like a horse for me." Her words scared the young man in the golden robe so much that he almost paralyzed on the ground, and his soul left his body. How could he have imagined that this pair of brother and sister, who were obviously born in a poor family, had such a great background? Not only did the headmaster of the Celestial Pavilion personally welcome them, even the favored Lin Sun came out. Looking at the others, they were all scared out of their wits, and their bodies were trembling. At this moment, how could they not understand that this pair of brother and sister had an extremely terrifying background? When they thought of how they had ridiculed them before, they were all nervous and frightened. Lin Sun was startled, and when he looked over, he couldn't help but be speechless. He is indeed not worthy. Let's go. There's no need to pay attention to him. Xia Ji nodded, and together with Mu Xian, they followed Lin Sun into the Celestial Pavilion. The headmaster of the Celestial Pavilion, Shui Tsonglu, stayed behind. The warm and kind smile on his face had already disappeared, and he became dignified and indifferent. His gaze swept across the people kneeling on the ground, and he said coldly, "Come in." Immediately, two descendants of the Celestial Pavilion rushed out from the entrance and bowed respectfully. "Tell me everything that happened here," Shui Tsonglu said. Immediately, the two descendants of the Celestial Pavilion told him everything that had happened after Xia Ji and Mu Xian had appeared here. After hearing all this, Shui Kanlu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and laugh coldly. "What a bunch of blind bastards. You even dared to mock Senior Lin's friend. I have to say that people like you are indeed not qualified to work for him." His words made the young man in the golden robe and those who had mocked Xia Ji and Mu Xian feel as if they had been struck by lightning, and they lost their souls. Remember their origins and names, and then chase them away. From today onwards, all the clans and forces related to these people are not allowed to take even half a step near the Celestial Pavilion. After coldly saying these words, Shui Kanlu turned and left. With his status as the headmaster of the Celestial Pavilion, he couldn't be bothered to deal with those small fries. He could just let the descendants of the Celestial Pavilion handle it. The two descendants of the Celestial Pavilion looked at each other, and then at the cultivators on the ground, with an extremely indifferent expression. And the cultivators present were not just shocked, but desperate and on the verge of collapse. Shui Kanliu's words were like a death sentence to them and the forces behind them. Who would have thought that just because they ridiculed the pair of brother and sister, they would suffer such a big disaster in the end? This was called disaster comes from the mouth. At the same time, in the secret realm of the Celestial Pavilion, looking at the ordinary-looking Xia Ji, Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder, it's been 2 years. Why is your cultivation still at the Sea Spirit Realm? Chapter 3297. Xia Ji raised her eyes and said, "When you came to the Taoism world, you said that you would keep a low profile and try not to attract attention." Lin Sun was stunned and said with a smile, "So, you have been staying in the Sea Spirit Realm?" "Yes." Xia Ji nodded and then glanced at Mu Xian beside her. "He didn't know I was a favored before coming here. However, I've developed a complete path that leads directly to eternity." Lin Sun raised his thumb and praised, "Great." Xia Ji smiled lightly and was very happy. Mu Xian was particularly nervous, and his body and mind were in a state of dizziness. He was just a poor boy in the countryside who had never been out of the countryside before. But now, he came to the Immortal Pavilion and saw many supreme figures who were like immortals. Under such impact, his mind was in a trance. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and suddenly said to Mu Xian in a gentle voice, "Little guy, don't let your imagination run wild. Whether it's a step to the sky or a big dream, just remember that you are Mu Xian." This voice carried a strand of the energy of the Grand Tao, and it struck directly at Mu Xian's mental state, causing him to instantly feel as if he'd been struck on the head and jolted awake. His messy thoughts dissipated, and he relaxed and calmed down. He looked at Xia Ji beside him and said with courage, "Sister, although I don't know why such a strange thing happened, I will try my best to understand it in the future." Xia Ji nodded. Lin Sun was lost in thought. It could be said that a country boy accidentally reached the sky in a single bound and got involved in such an opportunity. There were advantages and disadvantages, but as long as his mind was not lost, it was enough. At this moment, Lin Sun thought of Qing Feng. His talent was not good, but Lin Sun had the means to develop a Tao for him. On the one hand, it was because of Lin Sun's cultivation experience and wisdom. In the final analysis, even if Qing Feng's aptitude was not good, he also had the hope to aspire to the Tao. Otherwise, even if Lin Sun had the supernatural power, he couldn't do all this. Mind, life, talent. Lin Sun's mind was like a flash of lightning, and he was enlightened. Every life in the world had its own talent, and everyone had the opportunity to walk on a Tao of their own. In order to prove one's Tao, it wasn't about the strength of one's talent. It was about one's temperament. If one's mind was like a spirit platform, undying and indestructible, then the great Tao could be expected. Why was it that out of all the living beings in the world, there were so few cultivators who could reach the peak on a great path? First, he was restrained by the fetters of wealth, companionship, law, and land. But the most essential core was the state of mind. Setbacks, hardships, complacency, arrogance, and willfulness. Any matter of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. As long as one had experienced the ups and downs of the world, it was the easiest to breed negative karma in one's heart. This was the core reason why most cultivators in the world were unable to step foot onto the peak of the Grand Tao. What unparalleled genius! What heaven-defying talent! As long as one's nature is not lost, even an insignificant ant will have a chance to reach the heavens. Perhaps this is the true meaning of life, Lin Sun murmured. After witnessing the birth of various talents in the spiritual and Tao world and experiencing all the things in the Tao development world, Lin Sun had a further understanding of the way of life. 10 days later, Summer Solstice woke up from meditation. Her cultivation had broken through from the sea spirit realm to the immortal, transcendent realm, great perfection. This was normal. She had already developed a complete great path leading to the eternal realm, but she had deliberately stayed in the sea spirit realm before. Summer Solstice's experience was different from others. Originally, she had experienced reincarnation and recultivation. Now in this Tao development world, she had experienced it again. Therefore, she could rely on her nature and wisdom to develop such a great path when she sensed the great path of the Tao development world. For example, every time her cultivation broke through a realm, even if there was a deviation from the developed great path, she could adjust and correct it in this realm. This was completely different from Lin Sun's great path. At least when he recultivated, he still needed to improve his realm step by step and use the power of this realm to comprehend the heavenly Tao of the Tao development world, so as to develop a higher level of great path. But there was no doubt that these two ways led to the same goal. Are you ready? Seeing that Summer Solstice had woken up, Lin Sun asked with a smile. Summer Solstice nodded. Then let's leave this world today, said Lin Sun as he looked at the Tao Development Divine Tablet at the side. You first. Summer Solstice went straight forward and pressed her hand on the Tao Development Divine Tablet. Boom! The Tao Development Divine Tablet roared, resonating with Summer Solstice's great path, and a surging and obscure chaotic aura emerged. That was the power that belonged to the chaotic Tao fruit. After 10 minutes, a gate of heaven appeared in the void. Immediately after, a ray of light flashed out of Summer Solstice's cleansing Ruei and disappeared into the gate of heaven. Cleansing Ruei's body went limp, and she fainted on the ground. Lin Sun knew that Summer Solstice had obtained the chaotic Tao fruit and left this world. Without delay, he went straight forward and pressed his hand on the Tao Development Divine Tablet. Boom! In an instant, Lin Sun felt as if he'd entered into an expanse of the quintessence of chaos. Countless supreme paths towards the Tao were like a rain of divine rainbows that whistled and flickered within the quintessence of chaos, and they were suffused with a completely different aura. It wasn't a great path, but a great path that belonged to every kind of life, and it could lead directly to the eternal realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked by this scene. Sure enough, it's just as I'd guessed. No matter if all living beings are lowly, strong, or weak, all of them have a path to attaining eternity. In the end, only those whose spirits and mental states remain intact would have the chance to step foot onto this path. At the same time, a strand of chaotic origin energy was absorbed by Lin Sun, giving him a sense of perfection as if he had arrived at the peak of the eternal realm. Looking around, nothing could surpass him. Finally, I've reached the great perfection of the boundless realm. An indescribable satisfaction surged in Lin Sun's heart. It was a kind of great freedom and unfettered aura. Plop! Qing Feng fell to the ground and fell into a coma. After a long time, cleansing Rue was the first to wake up. She was stunned at first, and then she recalled everything she had experienced in the past 2 years, and her expression changed constantly. In the end, she suddenly let out a long breath, stood up, and bowed to the Tao Development Divine Tablet. Senior, you've enlightened me like a teacher. In the future, I'll live up to my teacher's expectations. Cleansing Rue's state of mind was clear and calm. In the past, she was just a country girl with a humble identity and shallow knowledge. But now she was in existence in the great perfection of the transcendent realm on the immortal way. Her heart and mind were no longer comparable to before. Before long, Qing Feng also woke up from his coma. Like cleansing Rue, he was in a daze for a long time and understood everything he had experienced in the past 2 years. Thank you for your grace of rebirth. Qing Feng got up and bowed to the Tao Development Divine Tablet, like cleansing Rue, in the mysterious God realm. The 7 destined messengers of the Jin tribe have all met with misfortune. The delicate and charming Qin duck of the Jin tribe, dressed in a long black dress, said in a low voice with a haze between his eyebrows. Pei Tu of the Gan tribe, Qin Yangzi of the Kuan tribe, Kahi of the Sun tribe, Tian Shu of the Zhen tribe, and Wei Yun of the Kan tribe were all worried. Failed again. Why is Lin Sun so difficult to deal with? Pei Tu let out a long sigh. Over the years, as Lin Sun broke through the gates of heaven, he brought them bad news and blows again and again. Now, the state of mind of the 9 destined path lords had changed greatly. None of them dared to underestimate Lin Sun anymore. It was completely different from the disdain they had for Lin Sun in the past. The core forces of the 9 tribes of absolute beginning are now gathered in the bound of universe. In other words, if we want to deal with Lin Sun in the spirit's realm, the bound of universe is the last chance. Qin Yangzi said in a low voice. Each of the 9 divisions of the absolute beginning sect had an extremely powerful envoy of heaven who presided over the Xianwang world. Every single one of them had a cultivation that was almost on par with the boundless Tao Lord. Kui said in a low voice, the bound of universe. That place is about the control of the origin of universe. If we seize the opportunity, we might have a chance to kill Lin Sun. Opportunity? Tian Shu said with a wry smile. To tell you the truth, I don't dare to hope to kill Lin Sun anymore. The others were also silent. Indeed, after going through so many setbacks, they did not have much confidence in their hearts. They did not dare to ascertain if the powers within the Xianhuang world could take down Lin Sun. No matter what, Lin Sun has entered the bound of universe. Even if we can't take him down in the end, we can't let him pass so easily, Pei Tu said through gritted teeth. His eyes were full of madness, like a desperate gambler. The bound of universe. Under a strong tree. Duso was drinking wildly, looking a little anxious. Opposite him, the old priest shook his head helplessly. We have waited for so many years. Why are you still so impatient? The forces of the 9 tribes of Taichu are scattered everywhere in the 9 realms of the realm of gods. If that kid Lin Sun wants to kill his way here, he'll probably have to go through countless dangers. How can I not be anxious? Duso said grumpily. The old priest was silent for a while and said, those old guys in the profound god realm are also waiting. This is enough to prove that Lin Sun is safe. Being safe doesn't mean he can reach the bound of universe smoothly. Duso snorted coldly. Ha! The old priest laughed. Speaking of which, I think of the divination I made for Lin Sun a long time ago in Xiao Empire. The path ahead was filled with fog, and the path back was a scene of destruction that seemed like the heavens were collapsing and the earth was collapsing. Now it seems that it has come true one by one. Look at his cultivation path. It is almost full of turbulence, chaos, and blood, which has caused many changes. Do So was stunned. Do you think that boy's a jinx? No, there can be no construction without destruction. This is an unprecedented change. The old priest shook his head and said, Golden Cicada saw it, so did Pewdie. I believe supreme existences like Chun Shi and Absolute Beginning have also seen it. I'm just curious what kind of changes he will cause when he reaches the profound God realm. Chapter 32:98. Do So was stunned. After a while, he rolled his eyes and said, What's the point of talking about the future? The old priest said, Because I firmly believe that Lin Sun can not only enter the bounded universe, but also cross the path of slashing and reach the realm of gods. Do So was silent for a while and said, If Lin Sun has a chance to enter the bounded universe, I will fight for a chance to leave this world even at the cost of my life. The old priest said, In the end, you are afraid of the 9 opponents of the 9 tribes of Taichu. There were only 11 of them in the bounded universe. He and Do So were 2 of them, while the other 9 were the 9 messengers of the 9 tribes of Taichu. There was a huge gap in numbers. In terms of strength, the 2 of them were at the same level as the 9 opponents. There might be a slight gap, but it was completely negligible. Over the years, the 2 of them had had many conflicts and fights with each other. Although they could not resist each other's siege, it was not difficult for them to escape with their lives. It's not that I am afraid, but I know that as long as Lin Sun comes, the 9 old bastards will definitely attack Lin Sun at all costs. Do So said, In the bound of universe, the competition is about the control of the origin of universe. Whoever condenses more origin of universe will have the upper hand in the competition. This also means that even if Lin Sun has the combat power of the infinite Tao Lord when he arrives in this world, it is impossible for him to fight against those enemies. The old priest said, Therefore, we must find Lin Sun as soon as he arrives. Only when the 2 of us protect him with all our strength can we give him enough time to comprehend and control the power of black-yellow origin. Alas, the problem now is that no one knows when he will appear. Do So curled his lips helplessly. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distant sky. He was tall and thin, wearing a blue robe with a white jade belt around his waist. His eyes were as frightening as the sun and the moon. Xidagarba, the old priest, narrowed his eyes. This was the messenger of destiny of the Kuin tribe, an extremely powerful existence. Soon after, in other directions, more figures appeared one after another. Some stepped on auspicious clouds, their bodies reflecting the sky. Some used wind and thunder, their bodies surging with infinite light. Some carried Taoist swords on their backs, countless sword diagrams emerging as they walked. Some, a total of 6 people, were walking toward them from different directions. Rumble, the sky was dark, and the void was in disorder. A boundless and terrifying aura spread out from the 6 figures, as if 6 supreme rulers had appeared. After being silent for nearly 100 years, these old bastards actually suddenly attacked today. Why do I feel that something is wrong? Do So frowned. He and the old priest were very familiar with these 6 people. They were Du Tianyuan of the Qian tribe, Xidagarba of the Kuan tribe, Zhongsu of the Sun tribe, Baju of the Jin tribe, Yinzhou of the Jin tribe, and Feiya of the Dui tribe. Every one of them was only a step away from the boundless Tao master. It was because they had fought against each other many times in the past that the Do So and the old priest did not panic when they saw them. They just felt it was strange. Lin Sun is very likely to come. The old priest's eyes lit up, and they are here to besiege us and prevent us from supporting Lin Sun. Do So was shocked. You go first. I'll hold them back. The old priest took a deep breath. Remember, you must find Lin Sun as soon as possible. We can't let him be caught by those enemies. Boom! He rose into the air, and his skinny figure shone brightly. A vast starry sky and hundreds of millions of stars appeared around him. Surround them. In the distance, Xidagarba in a dark green robe shouted, and his voice resounded through the sky like thunder. He and the other 5 messengers of destiny moved together. They each activated their cultivation and besieged the Do-So and the old priest. Rumble, for a moment, wind and thunder surged, and the sky collapsed. All kinds of horrible divine light rushed up, as if covering the sky and the sun. A great battle broke out. The old priest seemed extremely resolute at this moment. He was just one person, but he fought against 6 messengers of destiny head-on. He was completely reckless. But it was not difficult to find that if one looked carefully at the battle, whether it was the old priest or the 6 messengers of destiny, their figures seemed to have turned into a world of their own. Every single one of their worlds carried civilization, the grand Tao, all living beings and all things. When looked at from afar, every single one of them was like a civilization of an era, and these civilizations were ceaselessly attacking and resisting each other. Those inconceivable scenes seemed to be especially shocking. This was the struggle of the bound of universe. The cultivators who entered this world could transform into a shapeless world after comprehending and condensing heaven and earth energy, and it was sufficient to carry the energy of a cultivation civilization. This sort of power was also called the Tao of heaven and earth. The more abundant the heaven and earth energy condensed, the stronger the heaven and earth Tao grasped. Leave quickly. The old priest's voice resounded. Do-So took a deep breath and shouted loudly. His figure transformed into a shapeless world, and he released the profundities of the heaven and earth Tao as he charged towards the distance. A few messengers of destiny tried to stop him, but Do-So charged through them desperately, and he teleported towards the distance with all his might. However, even though he'd charged out of the encirclement, he couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. The blow just now made him suffer a lot of injuries. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. Zhongshu, Baju, Feya, you 3 go after Do-So. Xidagarba's shout rang out on the battlefield. Immediately, Zhongshu and the other 2 moved through the void and chased after South Xidagarba, Do Tianyuan, and cloud-traveling boat besieged the old priest with all their strength. Boom! The battle became more and more intense. Although the old priest was in a dangerous situation, his state of mind had calmed down. He knew that Do-So wouldn't let anything happen to Lin Sun, even if he had to pay with his life. However, the only thing he wasn't sure about was whether Lin Sun had really arrived in the bounded universe. If this was a conspiracy of the enemy, then it would be too dangerous for him and Do-So to risk their lives today. Do-So was fleeing. He couldn't help but wonder where he was now if Lin Sun had come here. The bound of universe was so vast that it seemed to have no boundary. Do-So had been traveling here for many years, but he still couldn't figure out where the boundary of the bound of universe was. Only Xidagarba and the other 5 showed up this time, but Xiao Yunzi, Imo Chung, and Zhong Rui didn't show up. It seems that these 3 have already noticed the movement of Lin Sun's entry into this world and started to take action in advance. Do-So frowned. After a long time, he murmured in his heart, Lin Sun, you must be safe, Do-So's pupils contracted as he noticed that Zhongshu, Baju, and Feya had caught up with him from behind. He didn't dare to hesitate and rushed forward while gritting his teeth. In this vast world, Do-So's figure was like a black flowing light. He flashed across thousands of mountains and rivers at an extremely fast speed. Behind him, Zhongshu, Baju, and Feya were chasing closely. However, compared to Do-So's anxiety and uneasiness, the 3 of them seemed very calm and composed. These 2 old guys are not slow to react. It seems that they have already guessed that Lin Sun is about to enter the bound of universe. Zhongshu chuckled. He carried an ancient sword on his back, and sword diagrams emerged under his feet. He looked elegant and unrestrained. It's a pity that when Lin Sun enters this world, the 2 of them are destined to be unable to help him. Baju's expression was indifferent. His body that was tall and sturdy like a mountain was surging with wind and lightning, emitting boundless fine light. being targeted by us. They can only save their lives at most. How can they have a chance to help? Faya chuckled. He looked old, but his voice was as clear as a young man's. His body was flowing with the phenomena of the heavens like tides, and his momentum was vast. We just got the news today. According to the analysis of the 9 Destiny Path Lords, Lin Sun should enter the bound of universe in the near future. Zhongshu muttered, but the news also said that even the 9 Destiny Path Lords don't know when Lin Sun will leave the Dao development world. Do you think that Lin Sun has already arrived in the bound of universe in advance, but we just don't know about it? Arrived in advance? Baju shook his head and said, that's impossible. If he arrived in advance, how could he not contact Do So and the old priest? Not contacting him in advance means that it's impossible for him to arrive in advance. That doesn't make sense. Zhongshu said, with Lin Sun's ability, he must have a deep understanding of the bound of universe before he came to this world. I'm afraid he also knows that if he wants to fight against us, he must comprehend and control the origin of universe as soon as possible. If he chooses to stay dormant after entering this world, it'll be extremely difficult for us to catch him. After a pause, he continued, that's why if we can capture Do So and the old priest, we can use them as hostages to threaten Lin Sun. No matter when he appears, he'll be threatened by us. If he has already appeared in the bound of universe, how can he remain indifferent when he finds out that we're chasing after Do So and the old priest? Zhongshu and Feiyan nodded their heads. After all, the bound of universe was too big, and no one knew when he would appear. If they wanted to strike Lin Sun at the first possible moment, they naturally had to think of another way. Therefore, after receiving the news from the 9 Masters of Destiny, they directly took action. The key was not to kill Do So and the old priest, but to take this opportunity to deal with Lin Sun. Just like now, when the 6 of them were dealing with Do So and the old priest respectively, the other 3 Masters of Destiny were patrolling the bound of universe separately. They wanted to find Lin Sun as soon as possible and kill him. While talking, Zhongshu, Baju, and Feiyu were not slow. They had been closely following Do So's trace without any slack. At the same time, in the depths of a quiet and uninhabited mountain in the bound of universe, there was an inconspicuous canyon. Tens of thousands of meters below the ground of the canyon, there was a cave residence. Outside the cave residence, there was a marvelous prohibition to conceal the breath. In the cave residence, a man and a woman were meditating. 3 consecutive updates first, and there's more in the evening. Chapter 3299. The man and the woman in the cave residence were Lin Sun. Half a month ago, they had already entered the Xianhuang world one after another. Just as his enemies had speculated, Lin Sun had long understood the matters of the bound of universe. He was also clear that before he could comprehend and control the source energy of the bounded universe, no matter how strong his combat power was, he would not have the ability to fight against those enemies. Therefore, the moment they arrived in this world, he and Xia Ji chose to cultivate. At this time, on Lin Sun's body, a mysterious scene of the Great Way emerged, as if it had turned into an invisible and boundless world. It carried the vast and brilliant civilization and countless great ways of the heavens. All kinds of phenomena and creatures were evolved in it, and endless vitality was surging and diffusing. The primal chaos was split open, and the heaven and earth were revealed. Profound practitioners were viewed as the color of the sky, and yellow practitioners were viewed as the color of the earth. Heaven and earth were also referred to as heaven and earth. But in the eyes of cultivators, Sky Earth was the shapeless world from when the chaos had just been split open, and it possessed the energy to bear civilization, the grand Tao, vitality, and all living beings. Or perhaps it could be said that Sky Earth could be called the heavens and the earth, yet it represented all worlds, all universes, and all worlds that were tangible and intangible. It was as small as the world of a grain of sand or a rock, and it was as large as the world of the universe. Everything could be taken as Sky Earth. On the other hand, after one comprehended the Sky Earth quintessence, the grand Tao grasped by cultivator will be able to evolve to the state at the beginning of the chaos And from there, it would allow one's grand Tao to realize a miraculous transformation. This was not a breakthrough in cultivation, but a transformation of one's own great Tao. Simply speaking, comprehending the heaven and earth source in this bounded universe would allow one to condense heaven and earth chi within one's own grand Tao, and one's own body would be able to transform into the heavens and the earth, carrying civilization and the grand Tao. When he accomplished this, it was simply no different than transforming into an era. In this half a month's time, Lin Sun had already easily comprehended and controlled the mysterious yellow origin, and the power of the Great Way in his body was undergoing a slow but amazing transformation. For example, if one were to fight within the Xianhuang world, they would be competing to see who could cultivate the Xianhuang qi more intensely, and who would be able to gain the upper hand in the battle. In other words, this was actually a competition for the Grand Tao in another sense. However, what they were competing in was their own great Tao's control over the mysterious yellow origin power. Since ancient times until now, there had always been a saying that any cultivator who was able to leave the Xianhuang realm would practically all be able to attain the level of the great circle of the boundless realm. The reason was that condensed sky earth qi was a critical factor that prompted a cultivator's path towards the Tao to transform. In order to leave the bound of universe, the bound of universe aura that one condensed must be able to resonate with the origin of chaos of the bound of universe. Only then could it attract the chaos Tao fruit and enter the heavenly gates. From this, it could be inferred that when cultivators condensed sky earth qi that was sufficient to draw the resonance of the heavens and the earth, they would already possess the critical factor to allow their cultivation to attain the perfection stage of the boundless realm. But it was totally different for Lin Sun. The reason was very simple. When he was in the Tao evolution world, Lin Sun had already attained the level of grand completion, boundless realm. It was precisely because of this that when he entered the Xianhuang world, it was effortless for him to comprehend and control the Xianhuang origin. He could feel the essence of the Xianhuang origin with ease and control it. Even when he was condensing the sky earth energy, it showed signs of advancing by leaps and bounds, and it allowed him to temper his grand Tao to 50% in a short period of half a month. The Xianhuang origin can bear the civilization in great way, so that the cultivator can transform himself into the world, and then he can also bear the civilization in great way. This is equivalent to transforming himself into an era. While cultivating and meditating, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The Xianhuang origin was indeed wonderful. On one side, the power of the Xianhuang origin was also surging in Xia Zhi's body. Different from Lin Sun's, the world she transformed into was as dark as the eternal night, and the civilization and great way it carried were like stars adorning the dark world of the eternal night, mysterious and deep. Time flew, and a few days passed in a hurry. Lin Sun, who was cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes. The restrictive power outside the cave residence produced a layer of ripple-like fluctuations, which was noticed by him at the first time. There's a cultivator passing through these mountains. Thinking of this, Lin Sun got up and poured his divine awareness into the restrictive power. Suddenly, a scene appeared. In the vast mountains, a figure flashed across the sky like a ray of light. Following that, 3 more figures appeared, and they chased after the figure in front of them relentlessly. Do so. Although the scene disappeared in an instant, Lin Sun still recognized that the figure being chased was Do So. All of a sudden, his eyes were filled with a frightening cold light. As early as when he was in the mortal realm, Xingjian Gorge had told Lin Sun that his master, Yuan Shu, had sent a message to Lin Sun, telling him to find Do So when he entered the bound of universe. In this way, he could get Do So's protection. However, because Lin Sun had already known about the bounded universe, he planned to find Do So after comprehending and controlling the power of the Xianhuang origin after entering this world. But who would have thought that Do So was being chased? Xia Zhi, concentrate on your cultivation here. I'll go out for a while. Lin Sun took a deep breath and made a decision. Okay. Xia Zhi, who was cultivating, responded. Without any delay, Lin Sun went straight out of the underground cave residence and then moved to the sky. Swoosh! He used all his strength, and his speed had reached an astonishing level. His whole body was like a wisp of shadow. Every time he took a step, it was as if the stars were moving, leaving endless mountains and rivers behind him. Huff, huff, Du So panted heavily as he fled, and his face darkened. He had been chased for 4 days. He had passed countless mountains and rivers, but he had not been able to get rid of the 3 heavenly destined messengers. Now, Du So had figured out the reason why the enemies were chasing him. Obviously, they wanted to capture him and use him as a hostage to threaten Lin Sun. This made Du So feel angry, but at the same time, he could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Although he was a little embarrassed for being chased, at least it proved that Lin Sun had not come to the bound of universe yet, or he had already arrived at the bound of universe and had not been discovered by the enemies. For Du So, this was enough. I have to find a way to get rid of these enemies. Du So frowned. He was in a bad situation. He had been running for 4 days, and it had consumed a lot of his cultivation. If this went on, he would not be able to hold on for long. However, Du So knew that if he was in a bad situation, the 3 enemies who had been chasing him would be in a bad situation as well. After all, he had been running for 4 days, and they had been chasing him for 4 days. Old man, you can't escape. Zhong Su's voice came from behind, and it was filled with cold hatred. Stop talking nonsense. Catch up first. Du So rolled his eyes. In these 4 days, he had been ridiculed, mocked, and threatened countless times. Now that he heard such a threat again, he felt it was ridiculous. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air in the distance. The figure held a silver spear in his hand, and his figure was tall, like a peerless war god. Along with his appearance, a shapeless power of heaven and earth surged out and transformed into a world. Within it, the aura of the Grand Tao surged out, and it was extremely magnificent. This person seemed to have been waiting for a long time, and he appeared out of thin air in front of Du So, who was running with all his might, had just stopped and intended to dodge when the world formed by the power of heaven and earth enveloped him. Boom! Heaven and earth rumbled, and everything trembled. Even though Du So's reaction was extremely fast, and he unleashed his power of heaven and earth, he still staggered from the impact, and he couldn't help but cough out a mouthful of blood. Xiao Yunzi! His expression changed as he recognized the man with the silver spear. He was one of the 9 heavenly mandate envoys, Xiao Yunzi. This made Du So's heart sink. He had been running with all his might for 4 days, and now he suffered such a sudden attack. His condition seemed to have worsened. What was worse was that Zhong Su, Baju, and Feiya had arrived in time. Old man, I told you earlier that you can't escape. Zhong Su sneered. Before the 3 of them arrived, a vast world surged out from their bodies. It was formed by the heaven and earth energy, and it could carry the Grand Tao and civilization. In front of them, Xiao Yunzi attacked again. A pincer attack. Du So took a deep breath, and the aura on his body rumbled. A world covered the sky, and it revealed a boundless might. He decided to fight for a way out. In the past, he had fought with these heavenly mandate envoys many times, and he could escape unscathed every time. But it was different this time. He was in a terrible situation, and now he was besieged by 4 heavenly mandate envoys who were no weaker than him. His situation could be described as extremely dangerous. Everyone, this is related to the action of dealing with Lin Sun. We can't let this old man escape this time, Zhong Su said in a deep voice. As he spoke, the battle had completely broken out. In this mountain and river, there seemed to be many arrow worlds fighting, and endless dazzling light rain was set off. Du So tried many times to break out of the siege, but he was blocked every time. Moreover, he was injured and covered with blood. The world of Great Way he manifested was also violently tumbling. It was completely suppressed by Zhong Su and was about to collapse. Do I really have to die here this time? Du So wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and he couldn't help but feel a little desperate. Immediately, there was madness in his eyes. Even if I die, I will drag someone down with me. He roared and threw caution to the wind. Seeing this, Xiao Yunzi, Zhong Su, Ba Ju, and Fei couldn't help but sneer. It was too late to go all out now. In the final analysis, Du So had consumed a lot of his cultivation during the 4 days of escape. Moreover, he was unexpectedly injured by Xiao Yunzi. In the eyes of his enemies, even if he went all out, it would be no different from a moth flying into a flame. But at this moment, Xiao Yunzi and the others were stiff all over. They felt a fatal danger approaching, which made them change their expressions and dodge subconsciously. Swish! At the moment when they were far away, a tall figure appeared out of thin air in front of Du So, who was about to go all out. There was one more chapter before 11 p.m.